slaves that are in Sudan, the slaves that are in Libya, the slaves in Mauritania are part of a legacy that goes back 1,400 years. Wow. That doesn't fit the media, fit the narrative. Why?
Some of the Christian community, they almost feel, or the sentiment is, well, we are Christians, so why do we're not going to worship the Jew. The Jew, is going to hell if they don't believe in Yeshua.
There was one of many mass demonstrations in Gaza City, the residents of Gaza in the streets protesting Hamas. People can Google this as well. The videos are there. The media wouldn't talk about it.
Welcome back to the Black and Jewish podcast. I am so excited about today's guest. He is an inspirational leader, a really close friend of mine. His name is Pastor Dumisani Washington. I'm so happy to have you.
Great to be here with you, Ashira.
And I didn't mention all the other wonderful things you do. You are the author of the Zionism in the Black Church. Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. You are a pastor over a congregation. Yes, ma'am. Yes, and you are a strong advocate and leader for Israel.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Well, I don't know, strong, but yeah, I've been doing it for a little
strong.
While. Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. I had Zionism in the Black Church. Yep, wrote that. The second edition was released in 2021. I wrote it back in 2014, around the time, right after I had started the Institute for Black Solidarity with Israel. I'm the founder and the CEO. And I did that part of the journey began after my first trip to Israel in 2012. 2012, I visited Israel as part of the African American Pastors Tour with Christians United for Israel. I'd always wanted to go. I'd never gone before. I had already had a passion both for Israel and Africa before then. These were things that had already been happening in my life. But that trip to Israel in December 2012, those things kind of married each other. And I came back to the States. God just placed something in my heart to strengthen the tie between both Israel and Africa and the Black and Jewish community.
Where did that first initial passion happen for Israel and Africa? Was it separate? Because I know now what you do with your organization, you're bridging the gap between the motherland and the Holy Land. Yes, but at the time, initially, was it just that you had a passion for Israel and then you had a passion for Africa, and later you started to combine the two together?
They were very separate by many years.
Okay.
So growing up in church, so I was born in Little Rock, Arkansas, and my parents were faithful members of King Solomon Baptist Church in Little Rock. We moved from Arkansas when I was a baby to San Francisco, California. We're always involved in church. I was the youngest of 7 children, and my mom was youth leader and everything. My dad was a deacon and a musician. He sang and was in the different boards and everything. And so we came up as what we call church babies, right? You're always in church. And they bought us Bibles from the time we were young. They did with all of us. They weren't super religious in the sense that they didn't make us, you read this many pages. And it wasn't that at all, but it was a very spiritual thing in our family, music and all that kind of stuff, the singing, the worship and stuff. And so I would read my Bible as a little kid.
Yeah.
But I read almost always just the Old Testament. I read the New Testament too, but mostly Old Testament. I was intrigued by the patriarchs or David and Goliath and Saul and as a little kid I didn't really know why. So there was this Israel thing that was inside of me, but I'm young. I don't understand. I don't even understand the difference between Old and New Testament, right? Those things they're not really explained in that sense. It wasn't until much later on that it was my understanding of both just a love for God and a love about these stories where Israel is concerned, and wanting to know more. I was telling somebody we called All Things Israelite. It was God's relationship with Israel, the whole sojourn in the wilderness, the difficulties, Book of Judges, all these things, for whatever reason, were fascinating to me. Right, I'm watching them, analyzing them as a little kid. So that was always there. I'll say one last thing where Israel is concerned. It was during my high school year. 1984, I graduated 84, 85 from high school. November 84 was Operation Moses. At that point in my life, as a 17-year-old at the time, I knew nothing about the modern state of Israel. Everything that I've said is all Bible, right? I don't know anything about 1948, 1967, the Arab-Israeli conflict, nothing. It wasn't talked about in our churches, wasn't talked about at home, but I was on my way literally out the door to go play basketball or football or whatever with my friends and, doing kid stuff, right? And my mom is watching ABC News with Peter Jennings. And so you young, back in the day, there was no cable. There's no internet. You had three networks, ABC, NBC, CBS. There wasn't, Fox didn't exist, none of that stuff. And so she was watching the nightly news. And at the end of the broadcast, he was saying, he was showing what I now know was Operation Moses. And I'm just looking at these black people in Israel. Again, I don't know anything about the modern state of Israel, but there's two images, Ashira. One was an Ethiopian woman with a baby wrapped around her back, like you would see in many African cultures.
Yeah.
And another one was an older Ethiopian Jewish man, apparently, kissing the ground at Ben Gurion Airport. I didn't know what Ben Gurion Airport was, nothing. But the images just grabbed my face. This is like just boom. I'm watching this.
And you're 17 at the time.
17 years old. Yeah,
wow.
17 again. No, that was my first introduction to the modern state of Israel. Was Operation Moses. I didn't know any of this. It was a few years later, when I began to explore the Jewish roots of my faith. Right, the whole Jewishness of Jesus and why this was relevant. These types of things. And so it was through that kind of retrospective lens that I realized when I started learning about the Operation Moses, I went, that's what I saw when I was 17. I remember those pictures. I didn't know what I was looking at. But as I say often, it's as if God put my face in his hand, like look at this, like someone's making you look at something, but you don't know why they're making you look at it because you don't understand what you're looking at later on. So that was all part of this Israel journey. The Africa part was as a young Christian and later on as a young minister. Among other things, I was also intrigued about the issue of Christian persecution. What was happening to African Christians in places like Sudan, places like Nigeria. So I became exposed to that in the late 90s. So I tell people, long before I was doing Israel advocacy, I was advocating for the treatment, against the mistreatment for Christians in different parts of Africa. I would follow Voice of the Martyrs and different organizations that would tell us about it. So I was aware of those things, had a deep heart for it. When we would homeschool our kids, they learned all, at that time, 52 nations of Africa and all their capitals and everything. There was just something about the continent that was really drawing me in. This was as big, again, in my 20s. So those two things married, right? They were, long before I was from young kid, the Israel part of it, later on the Africa part of it. So then in Jerusalem at the Western Wall, I'm praying and it's like, okay, they're going to put these things. I had no idea. It's like, okay, when you get back, I want you to do this. I'm going, okay.
Marry the two.
Yes, ma'am. Had no idea what I was going to do. It was like, and felt overwhelmed, but knew there was a sense to go and do something where that was concerned. So.
Wow, that's really incredible. I want to circle back to you speaking about biblical Israel and Bible and how you were so intrigued with the Torah, also known as the Old Testament and the stories. I do see, I follow you on X, formerly known as Twitter, and I see you talk a lot about Christians being biblically illiterate and about how we're seeing anti-Semitism from the church because there is biblical illiteracy. So in what ways are people interpreting Bible to use, and it's translating into anti-Semitism now because they have poor translation or illiteracy and they just don't know, they're not taught well?
I think that we are in something of a crisis, and I don't have hard data for this, but just anecdotally observing over the past 30 something years, we are in something of a crisis. Now, let me first say, there are many, many Christians in America who love Israel, pray for Israel. Some of the greatest support, some of the strongest support for Israel comes out of the Christian community. That having been said, you do have this particularly younger generation, some who aren't as steeped in Bible, and it's having an effect in many different areas, and Israel is one of them. It's having an effect in families, having an effect in identity, all of those things. And so it's funny, there was a Orthodox rabbi a few weeks ago I saw on YouTube was describing the phenomenon of Christian Zionists. Right? And I say in quotation marks because there was some negatives and positive things that were said. And what the rabbi was saying was that those Christians who based their support on the scripture, the support for Israel on the scripture, but literally on the scripture. And he was going through different scriptures in Isaiah and Jeremiah. And what he was simply saying was this: they take it, he didn't use this word, but literally. In other words, replacement theology, which manifests itself in many different ways.
What is replacement theology?
It, generally speaking, is the teaching that that when the church came into existence, and many of them clock it from the day of Pentecost in the book of Acts, chapter 2, that somehow God changed his mind. Okay. Israel was no longer his chosen, and the church became his chosen, right? Particularly Gentiles coming into the faith. Well, what I just said is nonsense. It's not a scripture. There's nothing scriptural in there. God's eternal covenant with Israel is eternal. When he called Abraham, he didn't say, I'll bless those who bless you, curse those who curse you, until the Christians come in, then I don't know you anymore, right? That's not how that happened. And so in answer to your question, biblically, that has to be the underpinning. That when we as Christians are reading the Bible and God says that I have an eternal covenant with Israel, those that bless Israel are blessed, right? I am married to Jerusalem, she's my bride. He didn't say, there's no expiration date on any of those things. So what we find is a combination of the biblical illiteracy, not understanding just text, and not just understanding. My wife often said there's illiterate and unliterate. Illiterate is that you can't read. Unliterate, you can read it, but you don't understand what is actually being said, right?
Right.
So that's a lot of what's happening in the body, unfortunately, now.
Yeah.
In the church, where Christians are concerned, there is either not knowing what the text says, or not understanding what it says. So, for example, what you'll often get, both Christians and non-Christians, you'll say, yeah, we're praying for Israel. And if you're trying to connect that to the modern state, that's not the real Israel. That's not the Israel of the Bible. So the first thing they'll say, it's not the Israel of the Bible. But they can't tell you what that means. What do you mean it's not the Israel of the Bible? Well, that Israel is a modern state and it's a secular state. And it's okay, I understand that. But how is that no longer the Israel of the Bible? And what you'll find is there's a lot of attitudes and a lot of emotional thinking around that, but nothing scripturally to back it up. And we often say, okay, so then when God says in Isaiah chapter 11, he's going to gather the outcasts of Judah from the four corners of the earth, and we literally have in Israel people who returned from Yemen, from Algeria, from Egypt, from Poland, from Argentina, from literally from the four corners of the earth, who are we to say that that's not Bible? How do we get to say that when these people are returning from Kaifeng, China, from India, from Europe, from Africa, from Asia, that somehow that's not God? Oh, that's the United Nations. I'm going, okay, you're just saying things because if you're saying that it can't be because of their secular influences, Cyrus was not a Zionist. King Cyrus of Persia was the one who said in the book of Ezra, the Jews need to return to Jerusalem and rebuild the temple.
And rebuild the temple.
So if God could use Cyrus, why can't he use the United Nations to? And they have no answers for those things because what they're operating on is this bias that says that's not real Israel, and it's a form of replacement theology. In other words, that's not who God has a covenant with. He now has a covenant with these people called Christians. Again, nowhere in the scriptures.
Just to offer a little bit of pushback, what I see from some of the Christian community, they almost feel, or the sentiment is, well, we are Christians, so why do we're not going to worship the Jew. The Jew, is going to hell if they don't believe in Yeshu. And basically they feel almost like in some ways that they need to bow down to the Jew or worship the Jew, or that there's Jewish supremacy. That's the term I'm looking for. They feel that there's Jewish supremacy. And so they're basically like, well, what makes a Jew better than us?
Right.
That's like the feeling that they have.
And you're right. A lot of people have that feeling, which is built on a faulty premise. The premise being that somehow there's this mindset in which you worship the Jew. Then nowhere in the Bible does it say worship the Jews.
Right.
And that for you as a person who's a non-Jew, that the Jews are quote unquote better than you. God's chosen. It's amazing. He in his sovereign will chose Abraham and his descendants. He chose them. He even says in Exodus, I've chosen you to be kings and priests, to be priests. And in other words, you're going to reflect who I am to the world.
Right.
That's a calling. If you ask our Jewish brothers and sisters, it's often a burden because then, my job is to show the world who God is, right?
And morality.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly. So then
even when we're acting immoral.
And it's amazing because it's what you're really talking about is God choosing a person to do something extraordinary through. And so anybody, whether Jewish or Christian, if you have that concept at all, you have that whole thing, why would he choose me to do anything? And the answer to that question, he didn't need to, but he's God like that. He wants to partner with Ashira. He wants to partner with, right? So he has this calling for you. For our Jewish brothers and sisters, it is a calling on a nation. I have called you, he said in Exodus, once again, during the first redemption. I brought you with eagle's wings to myself. God said, I redeemed you. So for the Christian who sees that as a negative, it's because they have it twisted. God chose Israel as his people. And he says to Abraham, and I'm going to bless the nations through you. So God's intention was always to bless everybody. He says, but I'm going to bless them through Israel. I'm going to show them.
Why does that term chosen make people feel that that is supremacy and or better?
It has more to do with the only person's insecurity. Now, it's amazing that for the individual who is then somehow made uncomfortable about somebody else's calling, it's really not about that calling. If Ashira walks into the room and she's the CEO of X, Y, and Z, and she's responsible for so, I'm either going to be admiring her or hating on her. If I'm admiring her, I'm giving her props. She's out there doing her thing. I might even try to, talk to her a little bit. Hey, Ashira, could you advise me X, Y, and Z? If she comes in and I'm rolling my eyes and she just thinks she's all, okay. So that second response is not about Ashira. It's about me. Because she's making me feel less than. She didn't come in with an attitude. She came in all gracious and everything, but her reputation preceded her. She's doing these amazing things. And now I just think, and that's what a self-defensive person will do. Ashira just thinks is that what it is? Does Ashira think that? Or are you tripping because she's doing X, Y, and Z? Yeah. So what you've had from time immemorial, where the Jewish people are concerned. You know what's amazing to me about the story of the first redemption? Here you have Moses and the children of Israel cross over on dry ground, the Red Sea, right? God spreads it, boom. They cross over. Red Sea destroys the Egyptians. And that's they sing the song of Moses. And by the way, for Christians, the book of Revelation talks about the song of Moses. The song of Moses is still sung, right? Continue to be sung for the world that gets redeemed, right? That's another conversation for another day. And what happens right after they get some water? Here comes the Amalekites. And what's always deep from that, so I would read those scriptures when I was a little kid. I was going, okay, was there beef? Did I miss something? This folks been in Egypt for the last 430 years.
Who's on my left?
They was busy, right? They had some slavery issues, everything. Here they are. So anybody with a right spirit, let me use that term, would slap high five. Oh man, that's amazing. Wow, y'all has been beat down. And say he's throwing your babies in the Nile and then God delivered. No, the Amalekites want to come and kill everybody. It's this amazing. Here you have, they've already endured the trauma of Egypt. They crossed the Red Sea. They're headed for their destiny. The Amalekites, who ain't got nothing to do with none of this. And the story for me has always been, here the Israelites doing their thing. They're chosen. Here the Israelites, they had the audacity to be called by God. And the Amalekites got beef. Yeah. And the spirit of Amalek lives today,
in every generation,
right?
Yep.
So that's what's always been amazing to me. So often, sometimes, even when Christians, the Jews have been going, okay, is it them or is it you? Now, you made the statement earlier, even if we're not acting right, it's, all of us cannot act right at some point, right?
Right. Well, we see all throughout the Torah, like, we had times when we're not acting right.
I'll keep on my past that. I would tell them often, I'll say this, for those Christians who then dismiss Israel or the Jewish people based on whatever they feel is legitimate. I feel they need to treat the Palestinians better. Yeah. I feel the Jews, this Jewish person is involved with X, Y, and Z. Okay, I get that. But what does that have to do with God's calling on them? Okay, because for the Christian, when you mess up, Christian, it's okay. So based on your rules, if you do something that someone doesn't like or that's considered not right, then God's done with you. Oh no, He loves me forever. Oh, so why does He love you forever? But when it comes to the Jews, they have this shelf life that you've determined that because X, Y, and Z, that's not how it works. He says, Israel is mine forever. He says in Jeremiah 31, that as long as they're the sun, the moon, the stars, and the oceans, my covenant with Israel will be forever. So who are you to go to those scriptures and those prophets and say, yeah, you know what, God said, you don't get to do that, right?
Yeah.
So Israel is God's chosen. How people feel about the nation of Israel, the Jewish state of Israel, their Jewish friend down the street, it has nothing to do
with being chosen.
Exactly.
I like to explain to people that the Jewish people are chosen, and they should ask, what are you chosen for? And we are chosen for a very specific role in the world. Yes. And just as the other nations, we could also say they're chosen to do certain things in the world. Yes, but we are chosen for a specific task, and everyone is chosen for a specific task. But us as a nation, we have a specific task that we have to do on this earth.
And I find that when people don't know what they're supposed to do, they get really distracted with what you're doing. And that's what I found for the people who are really involved. Like I'm using Ashira as an example. Ashira. Okay, but you keep talking about Ashira. Okay, for the last half hour, you talking about Ashira. What do you do? What do you do? What is your role? Right. And if they can't answer that question, that means Ashira is distracting them, right? So, for example,
do you feel that? Sorry to cut you off.
No,
do you feel that Christians may feel, because we use this term "chosen," that God loves us more, loves the Jewish people more than He loves others, because we're all created by God? Mm-hmm. But is there a sentiment of, well, we are just more loved, and then you're like a second class love?
I think that's a natural reaction for most human beings if they're trying to process something like God's chosen, God's calling, God's, it's funny in the scriptures, God tells Israel, I did not choose you because you were the greatest and the best. You were the least.
Yeah, we were.
That's what He actually says. But I think that what happens is almost like that arrival, like Jacob and Esau, right? Esau saw that his father liked him more. Mm-hmm. I think that it's a natural thing, but I also think that it's a natural thing that speaks to a certain amount of immaturity. So yes, some Christians, and again, I'm not bashing on us. We're Christians, but there's plenty of Christians who support. But for those who get distracted by what you're talking about now, the chosen, they love more.
Yeah.
Yes, some feel that, and then, he doesn't love the Jew more. I'm a Christian, therefore, and I accepted Jesus, so He loves me, and He doesn't love them anymore. So stop. That's not what that means, right? Your faith in Jesus has nothing to do with God's covenant with Israel. You have to understand, Jesus, who we call the Lion of the tribe of Judah, He didn't come and then disqualify Israel from being God's chosen. So we, in the Christian world, we talk about being grafted into spiritual Israel. Paul talks about in the book of Romans chapter 11, you've been grafted into the natural branches. Not that you've become Jewish, not that you've replaced the Jewish people, but there's this covenant that you have because of Jesus. That's what Christians believe, right? But none of that, even in that belief that many of our Jewish friends don't agree with, has nothing to do with replacing the Jewish people. The covenants with Israel go nowhere. The promises to Israel go nowhere. Or I'll often say it like this, for those who get distracted by it, scripturally, whatever, Ashira, it's funny that replacement theology will come in a very convoluted sort of way. So we'll go to the prophets and we'll read the promises, but we'll apply them to the Christians. But the negative stuff to the Jews. So when it says, Fred Hammond, no weapon formed against, that's Isaiah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. We sing shall prosper. Everybody sing, yes. Wonderful, right? We claim them promises, but it wasn't made to Christians. Yes. As Christians, we sing it and we apply it because we say, because of Jesus. But if we just understand that the original context of that verse has never changed, He's talking to Israel. Israel, no weapon formed against you will prosper. And every tongue that rises up against you, you shall condemn. This is the heritage of the people of God. God's talking through the prophet to Israel. If we just understand that He didn't change, He didn't go back and erase it.
Yeah.
He didn't go back and then, back in the day we had that liquid tape where you the stuff you blot something out.
Yeah.
He didn't blot out Israel and put church. That's not how that works.
Right.
I think when we as Christians remember that, then we stay on more solid footing where the Bible is concerned.
What's one of the negative ones they don't want to apply?
Well, it's funny. I'll go back to Fred. I'm not picking on Fred. Those I'm saying Fred Hammond. Some folks who are listening.
I love that song, No Weapon.
Right?
Yes.
So one of Fred's one of the all-time hit songs was We're Blessed. Okay. We're blessed in the city. We're blessed. It's based on Deuteronomy chapter 28.
Yeah.
Deuteronomy chapter 28, some 65 verses. As you know, God's telling Israel, here are the blessings for your obedience to my Torah. Here are the curses for your disobedience.
Right.
The song is based on the blessed verses. Who wants to run around church singing and curse? And you don't do the curse verses, right? Because there's no fun, right?
Yeah.
So you can curse in the city, curse in the... Ain't nobody trying to shout on that, right? So, right.
Yeah.
So, boom.
Ain't nobody trying to shout on that.
Y'all done sit down now. Y'all
They don't want to fall out to that one.
It's like, that's enough. Tell the choir to sit down, right? It's amazing because it became an anthem in many, especially black churches. They were singing for offering.
Yeah.
Well, the power of the text is that these are conditional blessings. God saying, Israel, do these things and you're blessed, right? But the covenant is made with Israel. So this is not about Fred at all. I'm not putting this on Fred.
We love you, Fred. Where's the camera? We love you, Fred.
I'm a musician, so I'm using music as an example. What the Christian, I hate to use this word, anti-Semite, or even the Christian, the replacement theology, the blessing scriptures, church. The curses, Israel.
Wow.
That's the mindset that's oftentimes addressed. So if there's something bad, that's those Jews because they need to get saved, quote unquote, right?
Right.
But the blessings we're blessed. Okay, but the promises that you're reading were made to Israel. And often that's what they'll get drawn into, that somehow the positive ones are for the Christians.
But not the negative ones. That makes a lot of sense.
Yes, ma'am.
I want to just quickly just go into American politics really quick because we've been seeing this... what am I trying to say? We've been seeing that they want to put the 10 Commandments back into school.
Oh, yes, ma'am.
And so some people are like, in America, we have separation of church and state, et cetera, et cetera. And so I tweeted out, okay, we're going to put the 10 Commandments in school. Is everyone kill and keep Shabbat? Because why is it that, some Christian groups, they talk about the 10 Commandments, but they don't keep all of the 10 Commandments, and they focus on do not sleep with your neighbor's wife, and don't kill and don't murder and don't steal, but like the Shabbat one is in there too. So I'm like, you know what I mean?
I know exactly what you mean. It's what you're actually touching on, and we'll keep it in the context of America.
Yes.
It is the struggle, which has always been the case from the founding of this nation, that was founded on what they often call Judeo-Christian principles.
Right.
The founding fathers, as a matter of fact, according to historians who do it, they quoted more from the prophets than they did from the New Testament in their documents, right, in founding the nation. So these were mostly, not all the founding fathers were Christians, some of them were not.
Yeah.
But there was this general sense that when they talked about, we hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal and are endowed by their creator in inalienable rights, that the creator referred to God, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. There's this general understanding, right? So when we are attempting to have our laws reflect Bible, there's always that struggle, right? Because we are not, or they were not, attempting to establish a theocracy in which there were priests who were actually the judges, and folks get stoned for, like you said, there's no capital punishment for adultery, which is in the literal interpretation of the Torah, right? So those types of things are there. So what were they attempting to do? They were attempting to establish laws and morality, and that morality based on Scripture. So that has always been the struggle. It has to be a struggle because lest we become a theocracy, which is the worst examples of that are what you're seeing, people being killed for things, right? You can go to Islamist countries, right? Women stoned, and so now we don't want to go there. At the same time, we do want to have some sort of basic morality. Yeah. Back to what you're saying, you can't just kill. It's amazing for the atheist who struggles to explain why killing is bad. They'll often say, because it's wrong. How would you know it's wrong? Because it's just wrong. Okay, but here's the problem. You might think it's wrong, and this other psychotic person thinks it's completely fine. Right. So now somebody has to be a rule, because you think killing is fine. He thinks killing, or you think it's not fine. This person thinks it is fine. So there's got to be a standard. Right. That standard actually comes from God, because God is the one who said, "Thou shalt not kill." Yep. Thou shalt not murder. Right? Murder. Yeah. So I'm glad that you said that, because they're going to catch me on that one and be like, no, it says murder, not kill, because there's instances when we do have to kill. Is that we do not murder. Right. Absolutely. But we're not going to break. We're not going to break all that down. Right. No, you're absolutely right. Not murder. You don't just wantonly go and murder. Yes. Right? Yes. Right. Yes. So this becomes the morality based on Scripture. And this is for all of us who believe in God, believe that that's what morality is actually based on. People may have different opinions about things, but when it comes to a sense of what is right and wrong, especially if I'm inflicting harm and pain on someone else, that comes from a God consciousness. That comes from us being created in the image of God, and you being a person, because you're created in the image of God, can't be just treated in any type of way because God lives in you. That's supposed to be the mindset. So, and yes, I can hear the people now, well, the founding fathers were slave owners. Yes. Dr. Robert Woodson said slavery was America's original birth defect. That in the midst of all this talk about freedom, you still had people for whom it did not apply. Yes. Later on, they have the whole Civil War around that issue, around the morality of that issue, and why. Again, the Republican Party, I'm not even talking about that part of the politics, but it was founded as an anti-slavery party, and they were Christians saying, and folks, I'm talking about this history, just dealing with history. The history hurts your feelings. So they were saying that if we're all made in the image of God, if this nation is supposed to be free, we're supposed to be free, constitutional republican, then these citizens being enslaved is not morally right. Some of them didn't like black people any more than anybody else. Their thing was just like they shouldn't be enslaved based on us being a Christian nation. And this is what was going on during the Western world. It happened first in the UK and happened here. And it was my point. It was based on their wrestling with this biblical thing. Are there slaves in the Bible? Yes. At the same time, they're saying, okay, but if we're going to be basing this on all men are created equal, clearly that doesn't apply to these black people who are still enslaved and some Native Americans who are enslaved. So we need to be more honest about that.
Does it go back to biblical illiteracy a little bit? Because when we talk about slavery in the times of Torah, it was actually really, really hard to have a slave because there's so many rules about having a slave and how you have to treat your slave.
And how you release them when it was time as well.
And how you have to release your slave after a certain amount of years. If there's only one pillow left, you have to give your pillow to your slave, all kinds of things. And so that, you know, that comparison doesn't really work because yes, there was slavery in the Bible, but not slavery as it was practiced in America.
Which, to your point, and an excellent point, many of it, because those abolitionists, they based theirs on a love for God and the Bible, they were also pointing to the type of inhumanity. The branding, the killing, the destruction, the sleeping with the woman so that she could, I believe Virginia was the first state to make it legal for you to enslave your own offspring. You as a white slave master could sleep with your black female slave and the children born are slaves because the law basically said it doesn't matter what your father was. If your mother was a slave, you're a slave. Wrap your brain around the fact that you have a law in the books that says your children are slaves because you slept with a woman who's a slave. So you're bringing children into the world who are slaves. That kind of mindset is what actually existed. And it wasn't every slave owner was in that way, but you had a lot of, it's what got included in the black codes and the Jim Crow laws post-slavery. The mindset that these people, because their skin is dark, are less than us. And what you're talking about is that the scriptures are talking about how they have to be treated as human beings. They weren't treated as human, they were treated like cattle. They were treated like less than nothing, except for the fact that you had to buy them, you had to spend money. Some of what the abolitionists were struggling with was that very thing. Not just the institution of slavery, but how some of these slaves were treated. Some slave masters were better than others. Some of them gave their slaves more rights, the type of thing. But some, as we're talking about now, the killing, the destruction, the maiming, that type of thing. So this was how a moral nation was struggling with its immorality. We fought a whole war against the British crown about how we got to be treated like this. And I'm turning around. Look, I remember there were some who were saying that in the South, and I'm going to jump into this controversial thing, but I'm saying for a reason. There was a small percentage of Jews who owned slaves. Those who make it an anti-Semitic thing, they make it as if the Jews who control the slave trade. It's not true. Never was true. The reason I bring this up is this. I've had these conversations with my Jewish friends. Pastor Dumisani, I had ancestors, they would talk about it. They would have their Seder. And they would talk about, because the Seder was the celebration of liberation. But their servants in the Seder were these slaves. So they were juxtaposing, here we are celebrating our liberation.
Well, we have slaves.
So you even had that happening, even within some of the Jewish, because some more prominent abolitionists were actually Jews and Christians coming together to abolish slavery based on the immorality of it, which is going back to the Bible. It's based on the Bible. So a long way around for what you're talking about, the whole Ten Commandments
Yes.
thing. Yes. There are people are saying that now because the Ashira, they're looking at, and I haven't talked to those people specifically, they're looking at how our nation has just lost the plot. How our families, our homes, our cities, the homelessness, the drugs, you see humanity being treated less than human. I'm from California. And we talk
Me
about
too.
this. Yes. Both California, West Coast.
Hey. They not like us. Okay, go ahead.
Lived there all my life. So because I was there since the late 1960s, I saw this transformation over the past 50 plus years. I'll just use one example, because I could use many. The homeless situation in California, and people need to really hear what I'm saying. I want them to think they know where I'm going. Hundreds of thousands. We don't really know, because how do you do really a census of homeless people? About 5-6 years ago, they figured there would be, maybe 250,000 people, over 200,000 people. My opinion is probably way more than that now.
Yeah, it's awful.
See what I'm saying?
Yeah.
San Francisco, LA, San Diego. These people often, they are emotionally, they might be mentally challenged. They might be chemically addicted, drugs, alcohol. And sometimes the smaller percentage is actually just poverty itself. But all these things combined. Some are war veterans. They're sleeping in their urine. They're urinating and defecating in public. They're in tent cities. And. It is an industry. They're community leaders. Seneca Scott is one of the young African-American men in Oakland. They've been using this term for a while. The homeless industrial complex. Where does that come from? The number of homeless is how one would register to get funds to help them, both state and federal. Billions of dollars over the last 20 years have gone into ending homeless in California, and it has only exploded.
So it's a money grab now.
There are even mainstream media papers that have actually written about the homeless industrial complex. What's my point? We have descended to a place in our nation that, come on, slavery, that we meaning political leaders, care so little about people that we will use their chemical dependency, the emotional instability, to not only not help them, to make money on them, because I'm disincentivized. Now, if I'm making billions of dollars a year to end homelessness and it's not ending, that means I'm making money on the misery of these people. And it has only spread. I've seen it over the last 2 decades in California, and I travel the country. And the more I would travel, the more I would see it in other main cities, because it was never as bad in other places. Ashira, it got so bad that I would get to a city and I would look for homeless people. I was so used to seeing what was going on. Now, for those who remember, I'm a pastor. We work with other ministries. We would feed, we would clothe. So it was, oh, you should be a pastor. Yes, we were doing, for folks who would come for the church, blame them. I said, y'all need to be quiet. I'm because stop. I know pastors, some larger ministries, some smaller ministries, who've been feeding and clothing for years. That has nothing to do with the fact that the homeless population is growing because people are making money off of them. Don't blame that on the pastor. Folks who listen to this whole podcast, I can be critical of the church, but I'm also going to defend when it's time to stand up. I've seen pastors out there doing the work, and the population continues to grow. That's not because the pastors aren't doing their work and the congregation aren't doing their work. It's because they're homeless. Well, sometimes they will have them move from other parts of the country, because California, especially in Southern California, great weather. San Diego, LA.
Yes, right? Yes.
They will
especially
pay them
San Diego
to stay out there. People can Google this if you want to. In Oakland, they had a meeting. I was so angry. And I knew about what was going on. Seneca Scott, again, you can Google him. I don't know him personally. I'm not trying to plug him. I'm just saying I've been watching some of their work because I'm from California. I'm following what's going on in Oakland, San Francisco, all of that, right? He said there are city council members who start nonprofit organizations and then hire community workers to go to the streets and tell the homeless, you don't have to leave and go to a shelter. You don't have to go get fentanyl addiction help and everything. You have the right to stay out here and do fentanyl and shoot up if you want to.
Wow.
They get nonprofits and hire people to go on the street and tell them, you ain't gotta. That is beyond evil. So even for the person who is addicted and wants to get off the street, they're out there telling them, they can't tell you what to do.
Keep doing you. It's kind of, I did my my thesis for my master's program about homelessness, specifically about housing first policy in California, and does it actually work? And what I concluded is it's not working. And one of the reasons why is because the housing first policy does not require you to have to go and get drug treatment or mental health treatment. It just says we will house you, and so you have to voluntarily go.
Right.
And who's going to voluntarily go? And so a lot of these people, they get the housing, but they end up leaving the housing actually. And then they don't. So they do have the services available to them, but they have to voluntarily go. So they're not mandated or forced to go. And so it just creates this loop.
And to your point, in California just last week, I don't remember the bill itself. People can Google this as well. Gavin Newsom just vetoed a bill that would allow the whole complex to be audited.
Oh, wow.
Now, just fill in the blank, right?
Yeah.
They want to account it. The billions of dollars have been spent. You've been saying this since you were mayor of San Francisco. Now you're the governor, and you've been in the homeless for the last 20 years, right?
Yeah.
So we want to know where the money goes.
That's so true. He has been in homelessness for the last 20 years. Like, when it's going to end, it's just increasing.
I've seen it because, again, long before he was out, I remember when Dianne Feinstein, of blessed memory, was mayor of San Francisco. I remember. I grew up in the area, right, between San Francisco and Stockton, California. So, and I remember the San Francisco at some points, at times, it would be one of the number one tourist destinations in the world, rivaling even Paris, France.
Wow.
And people, if they don't understand that, because the San Francisco today.
I don't go there. I go, there's like feces on the street. It's full of people on drugs, homelessness. I'm scared to walk
Ashira, it
down
breaks
the street.
my heart. My aunt, of blessed memory, passed away in 2001. She would go down there, catch BART. Well, you'll know that BART is San Francisco's subway station, but it's above ground. And she would go down to the Union Square and do her shopping. And I told my wife, I'm glad my auntie is not here to see what her city has become. First of all, I wouldn't let her go. She told me, Dumisani, I'm going downtown. No, you're not.
No.
You are not going downtown.
No.
And again, it's a beautiful city with beautiful people, and it has been so destroyed. And the homeless part of it is just one of it. Again, from people to clearly understand, I'm not blaming the homeless people. I'm not blaming them in terms of their drug addiction. I'm not blaming them in terms of the type of mental illnesses they're going through. Even in terms of poverty, this is not a person shooting the people saying, how dare they be needy. That's not what I'm saying. Yeah. What I'm saying is that they are being exploited. Right. I'm saying these people in those conditions, because folks have figured out ways to make money off of them.
Right.
That's what you're actually saying. That's what my anger is to those people, not to the homeless people.
Along that same thought process, I want to bring it back to Israel and the war with Gaza.
Yes, ma'am.
Because people believe that we're using this war between Israel and Gaza is also a way to exploit and to make billions of dollars. So what do you say about that?
Thing. It was so
with the military-industrial complex. And
it's the same
war
mindset.
Is profitable.
Pimps up. It's the same. Call it poverty pimps.
Okay.
Ashira, I told people for all that whole, if you're black, you stand with Palestine. No, here's the thing. If you really understood how the Palestinians are being exploited, exactly how folks in Oakland are being exploited, then you will see the synergy. Oh yeah, there is an intersectionality.
Break that down, what that intersectionality is.
Hamas is one of, according to Forbes magazine, it is the second or third wealthiest terrorist organization on the planet, according to Forbes, right? Whatever billions of dollars they have in assets and money. They rule Gaza. They got that mindset from Yasser Arafat, the former leader of the PLO, Palestine Liberation Organization, who himself died with billions of dollars. Question, where they get that money? I'm glad y'all asked that question. The money comes from international aid. The United States, the European Union, the United Nations, under UNRWA, United Nations Relief Workers, billions of dollars a year go to helping Palestinians. It's supposed to be for school and infrastructure and medical. What these guys do, Yasser Arafat's, the Mahmoud Abbas, who's worth something like, I don't know, $500, $600 million. He has this $12 million house out there in the West Bank, the occupied territory, right? Right? And Hamas, again, 3 top leaders worth $11 billion. Just the 3 top leaders, $11 billion. Okay, they ain't Elon Musk. What kind of tech do they own?
Right.
That's aid money. The Palestinians, both in Gaza and in Judea and Samaria, are largely either poor or very struggling in terms of job wages, their schooling. 2 months before October 7th, around early August, there was one of many mass demonstrations in Gaza City the residents of Gaza in the streets protesting Hamas. And people can Google this as well. The videos are there. The media wouldn't talk about it. But it was on it was on Twitter, it was on other people were sharing it. Some folks were sharing it from Gaza. Knowing full well what was going to happen. Hamas was going to come and shoot folks and round them up. One woman was crying because they arrested her son, who was about 14 years old, because she knew they took him to some sort of camp or some sort of prison. They're going to torture him. These people were risking their lives. Were they Zionists? No, they made very much against Israel. But the point was their protest had nothing to do with Israel. They were saying, we want better jobs. We want our kids to have better school. They were saying, why should Hamas and its people have everything? We don't get, long before October 7th even happens, right? Because they're taking the money and they're taking the food from the people of Gaza now, Hamas is. But this has been going on for years. And this is the same thing. Oakland, for example, is calling for a ceasefire when they can't even do right by their own people. Okay, so last year, I set up again. I can do this.
He's getting going. I'm like, just talk.
What was it? Last year? Was it August of 2023? I'm trying to remember the timeline here. On our ibsi.org, they can go to our Substack, Africa Israel Weekly, and they can check out our article called "Post BLM Oakland is crying out and nobody cares." The NAACP, the Oakland NAACP chapter, about a year ago, Ashira, I'm trying to remember exactly what it was. It was before October 7th.
Okay.
They wrote an open letter to the city council. And I'm using also Oakland as an example. Y'all fill in the blank. You can go to Philly, you can go to LA. I'm just using an example. They wrote an open letter to the city council demanding a state of emergency be called for the city of Oakland and the county of Alameda. Why? No jobs, rampant crime, lawlessness. This is the head of the NAACP in Oakland. We need better jobs. We need better schooling. They said people are dying. Asians are being attacked. Elderly are being attacked. There's a whole elderly thing going on there in Oakland right now. They said basically we need resources. We need better policing. We need more police, all that. Defund the police. They even went out and said, they called it, these progressive policies that are ruling they are failing, and our people are dying or they're leaving. This is the NAACP. National NAACP, nothing. Urban League, nothing. Nobody got nothing to say. After October 7th, here comes Oakland City Council. What they want to do? Israel needs a ceasefire. What? Wait a minute. Your own people are asking for better jobs and better security. Folks are dying. Nothing to them. They even had a fake town hall in which they had this little thing. They're going to hear the grievances of the people. They purposely put it in a small building. Everybody couldn't get in. Shut the door. There's videos of them standing outside going, we're trying to get in and tell our representatives what's going on in our city. But then the Oakland City Council comes together, and Google this too. Folks from wall to wall, free Palestine. That's the game, right? That's how they're being exploited. So they're being exploited for their blackness, to same with the Palestinians, and the Palestinians are being exploited because all that money's going to Hamas. And this is the game that gets played. So the black folks are being told, Israel's doing this and Israel's doing that. First of all, you're lying. But secondly, even if you were telling the truth, what the hell that got to do with the fact that I told you we can't even go from the store to our apartment because we keep getting robbed? You're not even addressing our issue, but you want us to free Palestine. That's what's been going on for a long time.
Why is that happening? Why is the black community being targeted? I just seen an article titled Black Liberation and Palestinian Liberation, How They Are the Same. Why is it so important to try to create synergy between black liberation and what they call Palestinian liberation? Why are they trying to create a parallel there? Why are they trying to say it's the same? What's so important about our black voice that we need to lend it to the Palestinians?
See, because we don't have 5 hours, I'm gonna make this. I'm okay. So I'm gonna back up. Remember talking about that whole chosenness thing?
Yes.
And the folks in Jerusalem thing. There's a calling and okay. Let me do this. Your black voice is so powerful and important that people are willing to pay billions of dollars for them to just think that Ashira feels a certain way. This is a scriptural mandate as well. From the days when the Queen of Sheba, who the Ethiopians call Makeda, traveled some 1,600 miles to visit Solomon in Jerusalem, there has been a synergy. It goes really deep scripturally, goes really deep spiritually. She stands in Jerusalem 3,000 years ago and declares her love for the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and God's love for Israel forever. She straight up said, God loves Israel forever. This was a distinction that only Africa Every other nation that went into Jerusalem was trying to destroy the Jewish people. The history of it in this country, the synergy between the Booker T. Washingtons and the Julius Rosenwalds, the Dr. Kings and the Joshua Heschels, we have defined human rights for the last 200 years as a people together, working together. And there is a morality in the voice of Black leaders that has been here from the beginning. Rightly or wrongly, however people want to view it, when they see you, they see legacy. Even if they're projecting stuff onto you, even if they're belittling your experience in terms of trying to will it, they still see it, and you can't control that. You can't. So that when a Black person says something, and people are listening, wrap your brain around it, because you have to explain why you're so invested in what Black people say. This has been the case for, especially since the modern state of Israel, this has been the playbook of Israel's enemies from almost the beginning. After the 67 war, they were calling Israel occupiers because, and once again, Israel had the audacity to win these wars. But especially after 1973, the Yom Kippur War, the United Nations was bombarded with the Soviet Union and Arab powers. The Soviet Union, who hated America, the Arab powers who hated Israel, and they combined together to demonize Israel and America in the United Nations. And what do they choose? Race. Zionism is racism. Israel is racist against Israel's apartheid state. Why do you keep choosing Black? First of all, you lying. Secondly, why do you keep choosing my story?
Why?
Because if they can demonize it as racist, it's the worst thing that they could actually be called. And if you can get Black folk to stand there, like Jesse Jackson hugging Yasser Arafat, it immediately legitimizes what is basically a Nazi movement. See, nobody's going to listen to Yasser Arafat saying, I want to kill all the Jews. But if he stands next to Nelson Mandela, if he stands next to Jesse Jackson, it makes him look legit. So I'm using these people. It's like the same thing at Madison Avenue. Nike was a struggling company, and they signed Michael Jordan to his own shoe. And the rest is history. And everybody want to be like who?
Right.
It's the same thing in this advocacy world. Okay. This is the same reason why the pro-Israel side also courts Black people. The difference is that they're not lying about what Israel is. But why do they work so hard to work with Black leaders? Because there's a legitimacy when a Black man or woman stands up and says what they say. Now, the reason I pointed back to the chosen thing, people are listening to, that doesn't make any sense, Pastor Dumisani. It doesn't have to make sense to you, it's just true. And we have all the receipts because each of the pro-Israel organizations have their own Black outreach. HBCU, I'm saying, why? Because I don't care, we're 12, 13% of the population. Why you care so much about? Because when a Black leader says it, especially if it's clergy, there is a gravitas to it. There is a credibility to it, which is why they want to say, these are all these Black South Africans that call Israel an apartheid state. And we say, okay, here's all the Black South Africans because it's not. Right?
Yeah.
Right. So what are you doing? So now what you're saying is that Black South Africans are not a monolith, right? And you're still lying about Israel being an apartheid state.
Right.
It is a value that is placed on Black men and women. And when we understand that, then we're able to not just use our voices in the right way, but understand why the pressure is coming. Why is this a lot? Why do they keep saying that if you're really Black, you're pro-Palestine? Why do they keep trying to make it a Black thing? Why do they keep trying to make it, they have organizations, Black for Palestine. Why do you keep making this a Black issue? Because when I do that, I legitimize my issue against the Jews. I legitimize my river to the sea. I make it a civil rights, a human rights issue. It's not, river to the sea means I'm going to kill all the Jews, but if I stand next to Black people, you're going to think it's a civil rights issue. And to this day, this is exactly what's going on. There are kids who couldn't find Gaza on a map who think that it's a civil rights issue. They don't know what Hamas does to its own people.
No.
They don't know about the honor killings. They don't know how they take their food. They don't know how they don't have decent jobs, how Gazans line up to get work permits in Israel so they can get better wages for their family because Hamas, who's worth billions, won't pay them wages. They don't know any of those things, but they heard enough of the Black jargon, but by now they think it's a legacy thing where Black people are concerned, and it's not. It's never been a legit Black issue. It's been a human rights abusing issue from the Palestinian leaders to their own people. But that's how they've been able to try to sell it. This is why to this day, they still try to use about 3 or 4 months after the Gaza invasion and the killing on October 7th.
Yeah.
New York Times ran an article. 1,000 black pastors demanding a ceasefire.
Yes.
Our organization's got all kind of calls about that. Pastor, what's going on? What's going on? It's amazing because you notice it didn't say 1,000 Hispanic pastors. All due respect to my Hispanic brothers and sisters, I'm not saying it's not important, right? It didn't say 1,000 Asian pastors. Why? There's all kinds of different ethnicity pastors all throughout the United States, millions of them. But they focused
on the black ones
every single time.
What can black people do, or what's the message to the black community on what to protect and guard what you put your voice to? Whether that in this scenario, whether that be pro-Israel or, quote unquote free Palestine. Like I always say, obviously I am Jewish. I'm going to be pro-Israel. I believe in the Torah. I'm biased. But if I'm speaking to another black person and I'm just like, I just want you to be educated. And then if you fall where you fall, you believe there should be a 2-state or whatever. I don't think there should be a 2-state. I don't think there should be a 1-state, etc. You can fall where you fall in terms of policies, but I just don't like the manipulation is that irritates me. And what is your message to black people on how to really, guard their voice and protect what they throw their support to? So whether it's our side, which is the pro-Israel side, or it's the other side, which we don't obviously agree with.
Yes, ma'am. Knowledge is power, and the prophet said, "My people are destroyed for lack of knowledge." So my general message, when I'm talking to especially black leaders, is to arm yourself with knowledge. Be knowledgeable. One of the reasons why the Institute for Black Solidarity with Israel exists, especially where the black clergy leadership is concerned, is because we want to bring them the information. We tell the pastors all the time. We'll have our different events. Thank you so much, Pastor Dumisani, for this. You guys are doing some great work. We're praying for you. And I tell them, I'm a pastor as well. I'm not a active pastor in terms of the congregation in California. There'll be another one in North Carolina, but I've been for years.
Yeah.
And pastors are busy. They got a lot of stuff going on in their cities, going on in their communities, everything. And so we bring the information to them and work with them so that they'll know and be aware, so that they're not manipulated, so they're not being lied to. The media is only going to tell you certain things. These groups are only going to tell you certain things. Here's what's actually going on, as well as bringing them to Israel. And we do that for the purpose of empowering. What we have found, Ashira, if there's any mistake made on both the pro-Israel and the anti-Israel side, I want to be very, very clear. I'm not saying that they're equal. Clearly, the anti-Israel side, for those who know what they're doing, they know they're shills for Hamas. They know that these people are being persecuted and not actually talking about what's going on. Pro-Israel side, what I'm talking about is equating anything. I'm saying how they often make mistakes in approaching the black community. Okay? And that's the reason why my book exists. I'm going to tell them this. Get this consulting, you ain't got to even pay a fee. Just
read the book.
Right? You know what I'm saying? Here's how they do. They make the mistake of wanting black voices, but not empowering them. So what I'll do as a pro-Israel, I'll go to Ashira. Oh, Ashira, you run this and so on, so on, so on. And Ashira, we want to take you to Israel and want you to. Ashira's like, and they say, for example, Sam, you're not pro-Israel, you just whatever. Yeah. Who doesn't want to go to Israel? Cool. You can go and see a Galilee. All right.
Yeah.
Cool. Right. You can take some pictures and whatever that. But they didn't really unpack some of these very difficult issues with you. What's going on in Gaza? Why is there a wall that separates the West Bank from other parts of Israel proper? What's going on? Why are the Palestinian leaders so wealthy and their people so poor? What happened when they drew everybody from all the Jews from Gaza in 2005? Why are the Ethiopian Israelis, some of them struggling as much as they are, right? Are they facing some racism? Is there some? I'm not having those conversations with you. I just want you to bring your black self to Israel.
And take a picture.
And then I send you back, and I go back to my donors and tell, this is how many black Ashiras I took to Israel last year. Didn't empower them, didn't have any difficult conversations. So now we have Jews being attacked in the streets. Where are all them black folk that have been taken to Israel for the last 20, 30 years? And people come, where are they? But if you didn't empower them, if your goal was to just take them to Israel, that's like taking someone to safari in Kenya, but they never connect with anything that's going on with Kenyan politics. They don't know any Kenyan people. Here's me on Mount Kilimanjaro. That's great. Did you learn anything about Kenya? No, well, no. Here's an elephant, and here's a giraffe, and here's a...
They're treating us like tourists.
There you go. Instead of empowering you and saying, when Ashira goes back, we want her to be able to have these conversations, and we want to be able to share some of these difficult... Okay, I'm going to tell this story. Quick story.
Okay.
Can't name the name. No names, just all...
Yeah.
Years ago...
We'll call them XYZ.
Yeah, XYZ. I took... in my role at Christians United for Israel, we would take pastors to Israel. I had an almost all-black pastors tour. We were going to Israel. This one was all-black pastors. There's one particular pastor from a particular city. He was engaging me and some of what he didn't like about certain things. And cool conversation. It wasn't necessarily bad. So one of the things I planned for them was to hear from an Ethiopian Israeli leader while we were in Jerusalem. I had a friend of mine who's an attorney, who's an Ethiopian Israeli. He came and he spoke and he asked me, what should I speak on? I said, everything. I want you to tell them everything. Because I know about what's going on. I know some of the struggles. I know some of the triumphs and everything. And I know some of the high incarceration rates for some of these young men, what's going on with the IDF. There's some very difficult things that have been happening, right? Yeah. They're working themselves out, but it's difficult, right? So he comes and he stands and he gives his presentation. He tells them, hey, boom, boom, it's good stuff. Here's where we're struggling. Here's some racist things that have happened to us. And so when it was done, I let them do Q&A because I want the pastors to interact. Why? I'm trying to empower them. I'm not afraid of him saying something that's difficult. This man loves Israel. Some of those Zionist folks in Israel, you already know, some of the Israeli community were high service in IDF. They fight for their nation. And they had some struggles, right? There's nothing wrong with admitting they had some struggles. So he did this. Had this conversation when they started asking questions back and forth. I mean, there was a very, very intense meeting. And when it was over, this particular pastor walked up to me. Pastor Dumisani, I want to thank you for hosting this. I said, sure. He said, I've come here before and with another group who I met Ethiopian Israelis then. They had to read from prepared text and they escorted them out the door when they were done.
Oh, wow.
Later on, we saw them in a restaurant later on, and we had a different conversation with them about other stuff that they didn't talk about. He went, I thought you were going to... So I didn't know that was his experience.
Wow.
What he was saying was that the group that took him didn't want to empower him. They wanted to show him black Jews.
Yeah.
So that the black Jews read from... So here's the thing. Unless I'm somebody who's not very intelligent, I know you're trying to play with me.
Right.
You want me to come to Israel? Okay, I'm in Israel. Okay, you'll show me some black Jews. Okay, black Jews. Okay, no, you can't talk to them.
Right.
You're going to read from a prepared text and then you're going to leave? And what if I had a question? No, so that's not empowering. That's a safari. So when I get back, what am I going to tell them? So when I get back to wherever city I live in and I see some of the protests of the Ethiopian Israelis because of some stuff with police, whatever, and Ashira, you went to Israel, didn't you? Did you talk to them about that? No, but I thought you meant, when I now think about it, they read from a sheet. Yeah. And they escorted them out the door.
So now this is what I think how they treat Ethiopian Jews in Israel.
I don't want you to talk to them. I'm also demeaning those Ethiopian Israelis. Because if I'm not going to let them speak other than the script that they read from, I'm demeaning them. And as a black person, I know what that looks like. Token. Yeah. You're the pro-Israel organization. You're tokenizing them. See what I'm saying?
Yeah.
That's what I'm talking about. That's not empowering you.
Right.
Empowering you means, Ashira, you're going to have difficult conversations, but you know that Israel is strong and is a democracy, and the people, it's not perfect, but it's the freest nation in the region. The freest Arabs live in Israel. The Ethiopian Aliyah is still real. There's still these amazing things. Saying that things are difficult at times, saying that people are struggling, doesn't demean Israel. It's just Israel's a nation.
Right.
But often what we find that even on the pro-Israel side, I want to paint it with the veneer. I want to give it this, but it's not real. So when Al Jazeera comes and tells you, and they're propaganda arm, but they're telling you something real that happens, that going, okay, but we didn't address that.
Yeah.
We didn't talk about that. I didn't empower you.
How do we do that? Because I can find sometimes in my own advocacy online, especially after October 7th, yes, we are in this mode in the media, just defend. I know when Israel hit that aid truck on accident, Israel came out and said we did do that. It was our fault. And then we came out and we all gave statements. When I say all, I mean all the pro-Israel advocates. And we gave statements or whatever. But I'm in different groups,
Yes, ma'am.
different text messaging groups, and some things we don't speak about in terms of Israel, because right now we feel like we need to be defending Israel and not trying to explain all the complexities of Israel. And obviously it's not a perfect place, but it's like, if Israel does one thing wrong, or if we, as the pro-Israel person, talks about the wrongs of Israel, they just pile up on us. But I do agree with you that why are we just painting this flowery picture? And I feel that Americans are very hypocritical in their judgments, because I'm like, well, Israel's like any other nation in the world. It has issues. So oftentimes I'll get under my videos, you're black, you know how they treat the black Jews in Israel, you know that they sterilized the Ethiopian women. And it's like, no, they didn't sterilize them, but they did give them birth control without their consent, which I condemn. I don't believe in population control, and I personally don't believe in taking birth control anyways. However, why are you guys harping on that thing? Because every nation in the world has done immoral things as that nation has grown to their people. There's injustices that happen, but it does feel like we can't even, they say, well, give us a criticism of Netanyahu in Israel. It's like, okay, I would, but then you're just going to use that against me. And so,
no, you're right.
I hear you. Like, I think people need to have that type of experience that you're talking about. So I guess I'm more so asking you, what do people who are advocating for Israel, what kind of messaging should we be putting forth? Because most of our messaging is trying to show the positive. We are trying to show, even with my show, Black and Jewish, I am trying to show Black people, Black Jewish people, that we live there, we have fun there, like life is great. Life is great, but life is also hard anywhere you live.
So you are touching on two different issues. One of them is the broader advocacy issue, which is what we generally try to say in our organization, just be real with people, Sometimes issues are difficult. So, for example, the sterilization issue. I've heard about years ago. I actually interviewed, at that time, Panina Timona Shata was an MK member. She wasn't right now she's over the Aliyah ministry, but she was serving in another area. I had the privilege of interviewing her. Shimon Solomon was another Ethiopian Israeli MK member. And then I interviewed some other Israelis. This was like 10, 11 years ago to get to the bottom of the story. And the short version of the story was that it wasn't widespread. It was a specific medical thing. Much of the whole Depo-Provera, which is a birth control method, given to some of the Ethiopian Israeli women, were given, some of it was language issue. They didn't understand what it was. And for some of them, they were not told exactly what it was. Some of them, and again, this is information that I got in interviewing people. Some of them knew, but they didn't want their husbands to know because they didn't think that they would be in agreement there. So they did it and didn't say anything. So you had a lot of different issues that were going on there. But the bottom line was that for some, they were given and they weren't told what it actually was. But sterilization never happened. It was just a lie that was started by one of the papers, which is, I'm not even getting into that part of it now, but and it's still the lie to this day. But that's an example of a difficult issue to have the complex discussion around. So I'd say the Israel advocacy organizations, don't ignore it, have the conversation. Talk about what actually happened. Yes, the anti-Israel groups are going to use it like they use it. You can't control that in terms of media. But if you're going to engage people who are non-Jews and non-Israelis and you want them to learn, teach them then. Have difficult conversations. If you don't trust the people that you've recruited to have difficult conversations, you shouldn't have recruited them. If they don't have the intellectual ability to wrestle with difficult subjects, then you just got them because they're black. You didn't get them because of how they think, and you're doing the same tokenizing that the anti-Israel group does. You're not really concerned about them as people or as community leaders. You need their skin color. That's what you want to be. Are you empowering them, or are you giving them a tourist guide and a trip and some pictures so you can take it back and tell your donors that you took black people to Israel? Because that's what's been going on broadly, which is why we have this state where we're in now, in which there's not a lot of information. Like you said, they'll say, oh, why black folks anti-Israel? But it's not that black folks are generally anti-Israel. It's that often we're not aware. Okay, Americans aren't aware. It's not just black folks. These kids on the campuses, that's about free Palestine, most of them aren't black. Unless you checked it out. It's not the HBCUs that are on fire, y'all.
No.
It's the white schools that are on fire. So what you actually see going on is not a black thing. It's an American thing. Our education system and all of those things, right? That's the first thing. The other thing I was going to say in terms of specifically in terms of the black community, Ashira, along with that engagement part, there has to then be the partnering together. Now I brought Ashira to my organization. I brought her to Israel. I've empowered her. Now I'm partnering with her because she's bringing that information back, right? As a pastor, as a business leader or whatever. And now I'm working with her because the difficult conversation that we had with her in Tel Aviv and now that she's back in Chicago or LA, we're willing to have events and have those kind of events with her other leaders. So Shira goes back and said, okay, you need to talk to this pastor, you need to talk to this person, and let's all begin to talk about what we need to do to get this information out. That's often the slower process. It's not the click on this link process.
Right.
It's not the post on Instagram process, but it's the real process because that's what actually affects change. You just want a picture? Fine. Get a picture. Get some black folks. Let them stand by the Western Wall, take some pictures.
Yeah.
You still gonna get what you get because if you have not black, white, Hispanic, if you've not empowered them, you've done nothing but waste donor dollars. I hope I answered your question. I'm not trying to be mean, just trying to be real because there's too much going on. Just too much.
No, I really like, I think this conversation is so needed, especially because even as a Black Jew, I was at a conference in New York and they had a diversity panel. So all the panels were obviously Jews talking and we're talking to other Jews. And then they had a diversity panel for the diverse Jews. And one of the women on the panel, a good friend of mine, she's also been on the show, shout out to Amy Albertson. She said, listen, I'm happy to talk on the diversity panel, but I'm just a Jew like everyone else. Why can't I talk on the panel of my expertise? And her expertise is marketing and social media. And the other person was politics. Why is there just a diversity panel and you get like all the Jews of color that you know, the Asian one, the Black one, and the Indian one, you put them on a panel and then just talk about like how much you love about Israel when you could just put them on all the panels because they're just Jewish,
100%, 100%. And when people see that, and they see the diversity that is the Jewish community talking about whatever, then that actually, it almost on an unconscious level, it lets them know, here's Israel, here are Jewish people, whether they live in Israel, whether they live in other parts of the world, and here's how they roll. Here's how they do it this way. Oh, these Black Jews, oh, it's Jews from Yemen, they're Jews from, right? And nobody's even tripping on that. They're just actually talking about what they're talking about. You're right. That's the empowering part for those of us who aren't Jewish and we're advocating for the nation, we're able to just point to that, right? Not just, they had Ashira on the Black Jewish panel. Okay, that's cool. But she's very brilliant. She does a lot of different things. Some of them have nothing to do. There was a video out. There was a video, Sidney Poitier, the great African-American actor who passed away recently, last year, I believe it was. It was in the 60s during the Civil Rights Movement. He was at an event, you can Google this, people, and he was being interviewed by the press. It was a press conference. And he was taking questions. I guess he's already a big movie star, so the questions could be around anything. Every question was about the civil rights thing, was about Black men being Black people in America. And that was the third question. He basically put them on blast. He said, you know what? I'm not just a Black man. He said, I'm very aware of what's going on. He said, but you could ask me different questions because after a while, he's noticing that even though he's this accomplished actor, they only want to talk about Black things.
Like, ask me about my art, my acting, or anything. I have range.
And he did it like the brilliant, eloquent Sidney Poitier did. Like me, I'll get all loud because I'm from the street. But he was like, he was basically saying, I'm fine to talk about those things, but you guys just keep asking me about, it's almost like a segregated interview. Here's the Black topics. Right. Let me let you talk about that. So, okay, I can. But I have some I have some thoughts on the economic situation. Oh, well, we'll get the other people to talk about the economy of you talk about how it affects Black people. We
need your voice and your skin color to talk about this thing and this thing only.
And I want to say this really clearly for those who see all my passion around it. I'm just a loud and passionate person. It's not so much me trying to put other people on blast. This is what it reminds me of, talking about the empowerment. It reminds Black folk how valuable their voices are. See, that means if I know that other messages need to get out. Now I'm speaking as a Black American, right? Non-Jewish, pro-Israel, Christian. That means that for me, if I know that there are other nuances and other things that need to be coming out of the Black community and that we need more information, that's on me now. That's not on the pro-Israel organizations anymore. Right. So I'm saying, I can sit there and yell and scream about, they do this like that, but what am I going to do about it? If I care that much about it, and I think that this, with all due respect, could be done better, then I probably need to actually demonstrate that and say, okay, this is how you need to. So when we took our embassy ambassadors to Israel, took them to South Africa in 2022 and to Israel in June 2023, We were working with a model. We did a vetting process. They had to apply, they got interviewed and everything, and we chose Black American young men and women from across the country, different venues, some of them entrepreneurs and education, and we had a concept of it. Blew our minds, both in South Africa. We went there and dispelled the whole Israel apartheid thing, but not just apartheid stuff. We went to the business community and they just, Ashira, just the Jewish community in South Africa. There are things that I learned in it as well, right? How they, just like the Jewish community work with Black folks here, the civil rights movement, they work with Black South Africans. Nelson Mandela stand up there in front of a synagogue thanking the Jewish community for its help. The same thing Dr. King said in the United States of America. And we're watching all these different things. These young people came back. They are so empowered because we talked about the difficult issues. We had these, and I'm not tooting our own horn. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying that we tried to put our money where our mouth was. Our donor money, right? We said, okay, here's our concept. Our concept is if you really take them and we engage with our Black brothers and sisters, if we actually have the deeper conversations, difficult conversations, we can handle it and we can bring that back to our community. That's exactly what happened. So they're able to see those things for what they are. They don't think Israel's in a perfect place because we had some conversations about Israel's imperfections, but they still came away even more connected to standing with Israel because they saw the real, the whole thing. Now, quick example. Parents, let me just give this out as a thing. Parents, as you're raising your children, your goal is not for them to see you as perfect. They already know you're not perfect. The older they get, the more they see that mom and dad don't always know exactly what they're talking about, but you want them to honor you and respect you. But as they get older and you're real with them seeing your flaws doesn't make them disrespect you and lets them know that you're real. That even when mommy and daddy make a mistake, they know how to say, my bad. Oh, I shouldn't have done it. And then they see you, they already love you, but as they're seeing you now, because you keep trying to show them that you're perfect, they're gonna rebel against that because they know that you're not. They see you and it's not cool. There's no lights, there's no camera, none, it's just you, and now you wilding out. Also, okay, so daddy acts like this in front of these people. Then he wilds out like this, right? But when they see that daddy's the same person and daddy makes mistakes, that relationship, so now the child is older, they don't see mommy and daddy as perfect, but they love them because they honor them. And even in the midst of their flaws, they understand the strength of their character. When you can only have a real relationship with someone if you're gonna be real. If you're gonna play games, man, go play a video game, right? If you don't want a real engagement, that's when you're not gonna be really real. But if opposed to we're gonna stand with Israel, and I represent and go to these other communities, especially the Black community, man, you better come real. Let's have real, I might have some conversations. What happened with this? How come this? And if you just act like I didn't say anything, then I don't know, you don't really want me, you want my skin, because go get a cardboard cutout of me, or go find somebody else. You're trying to fill a quota. You're not actually trying to engage. That's what we understand. And so for us, we said, okay, that means if Black voices have to do it, has to be Black voices reaching them. We can work with everybody. But that's why Black South Africans realize that we're going to push back against this false Israel apartheid narrative. We have to do it. We can work with everybody else, but we have to be the impetus. We have to be the one starting this. That's what we see happening more and more. That part is a good thing because it has to be the ownership, right? If they're going to use my Black voice against Israel and try to do the free Palestine, then I need to take my Black voice, inform myself, right? And then speak out so I know what I'm talking about.
Right.
So,
I want to talk to you.
I'm sorry.
No, that was great. I want to talk to you about on that same thought about the impact of the Black voice. So we both know that here in America, Black people do not vote based on foreign policy. Their vote is not going to be swayed based on our policies with Israel. So what is the impact that the Black voice is having? Is it a media impact? So why does either side actually need the Black voice? Because what is the measurement of impact that it's having?
You're absolutely right.
Given that it's not going to show up in the polls or the way that we vote or who we vote for.
Excellent question. And you're right. It's a media. I would use a different word, perception. Perception is reality. So that if people perceive the free Palestine issue as a Black or civil rights issue, then they'll line up with it. You remember, Ashira, just a few years ago, in many of those Black Lives Matter rallies, you saw more white people than Black people?
Yep.
These cities where there's a pretty big percentage of Black folk, you could throw a rock and not hit a Black person. This big old wide angle lens, I'm sitting there going...
Right? Where's all the Black people?
Because many of those people, white and non-Black, took the movement against police brutality, but it became something personal to them, even though there were some flaws within the organization. And I'm talking about long before you get to 2020. 2016, there are about 12 or 13 Black Lives Matter chapters around the country. They published a piece saying, where's the money? They said there is a time for accountability. That means hundreds of millions of dollars are already gone in. Even Mike Brown's own family, Trayvon Martin's family, they were saying, okay, y'all keep raising this money, putting us on the picture. But so they were organizing there. They were saying, okay, they're literally asking for stuff like, we're going to have a town hall, whatever, right? And you're the head of the thing. Ashira, can we get some requisition stuff? Nah, I ain't got no money. We got no money. Wait a minute, where all that money going, right? These are Black Lives Matter chapter leaders.
Right.
Not other folk, right?
Right.
So what you started to see that even within our community, there was debates about how effective the organization was. They weren't talking about whether or not there needs to be rights and civil rights. What they were talking about was, okay, but what is this organization doing? So it became a feel-good organization for a lot of folks who weren't Black, so they can give money and feel good about their march. Oh, I can tell another story. I got all these stories from an old man.
Right.
During the George Floyd protest, we got folks who would contact us because they saw we were a Black organization. They wanted to know what they could do to help the Black community. My son talked about this in his article. He talked about it on one of our podcasts. There's one particular person, this is just an example. It wasn't the only one, I'm gonna give you an example. They engaged us on social media. I want to know how can I help the Black community? And the other thing was that we work with a lot of different Black organizations, right? And the Frederick Douglass organization, the Wood Wilson Center, the different ones, right? Who've been doing work for a long time with Black community. And we already knew that Black Lives Matter was a situation where the money was being made funny, and the anti-Israel stuff, the anti-Black family fathers, we saw that stuff, right? This is a Marxist organization. She said we're a Marxist, right? So okay, this is not really helping us. They're about another agenda.
Yes.
So they wanted to find out how they could help. And my son told them, here's the other organizations. Oh, no, I want to go march. I want to, he was like, okay, that's not really what we do, march. And then he said something about we work with these organizations that have been working in the Black community. So I didn't know you guys were right wing. He's like going, where you get right wing from? We don't, the march, that's another thing. And then, you guys, you can't be telling people this. And then they start telling us how to be Black. It's like we say all the time. I'm 57 years old, been Black all my life. My son is 33, he been Black all his life. But these white people gonna tell, whoa, he's going, we from San Francisco, I'm from, I know what I don't got to read this in a book, bro. I actually talk to people on the street, right?
Yes.
So they're all just, you guys should support. And we're like going, we don't support the organization because we know what's going on.
Right. On that note,
yes, ma'am.
An article came out after October 7th,
Yes,
and because BLM, one of the chapters, I think in Chicago, came out with the parachuter.
Yes, ma'am.
So an article came out and said, the Jewish community said, we have been supporting Black Lives Matter. We've been supporting all these social movements. Where are the Black people for us? And I responded and I said, we never told you to support BLM. We have always said BLM is, it's no good. That was a feel good for you. No one said to support BLM, and that's not indicative of Black people now not supporting you. But I know that also has to do with political parties, right? So most American Jews are liberal and fall on the left. And so they supported BLM and other social movements like that. And I was just saying, listen, we didn't want BLM in our communities.
BLM was such a
and why were Jewish people supporting BLM when BLM was clearly in their documents talking about freeing Palestine? And can you talk about the Arab alliance with the Black America and how we have something coming over here with Mike Brown, and then that turns into Free Palestine? What does police brutality with Michael Brown have to do with freeing Palestine? Where is the connection there? You
have both Jewish and non-Jewish, non-Black folk who jumped on the BLM thing for lots of different reasons. Much of them out of our heartfelt, we want to help.
Right.
But unfortunately, many of them not listening to the Black voices inside. Once again, tokenizing people, right? So that even when they're talking to other people who are telling, here's the problems that we're having with the organization, they don't listen to them because I want to march, I want to wear a Black Lives Matter t-shirt, whatever. Right? Because
I want to post a Black square.
See what I'm saying? Because now it's not even about you. Like my Jewish friends, when they say, we talk about it all the time, somebody said they stand with Israel or they stand with the Jewish people, but then they say either anti-Semitic stuff or they align themselves stuff with stuff that for the Jewish people, they're going, okay, but that's not either biblically correct, that's not whatever correct, but you call yourself a friend, right? So you need to actually know what you're doing. So, okay. So what you had, so Mike Brown was the turning point. Black Lives Matter was founded in 2013 after the acquittal of George Zimmer.
Yeah, Zimmerman.
Who killed Trayvon Martin.
Yep.
That's when it got started. And I think Patrice Cullors said, Black Lives, Our Lives Matter. Some of the three young ladies who actually started, right?
Right.
So it wasn't until 2014 when Mike Brown was killed in Ferguson that it really began to take hold, because people didn't know what it was until then. The protests are going on. And I recommend for anybody, read the article from Washington Post in 2016 called Who Killed... Oh man, I'm not going to remember his name. I'll have to send it. There's a young man who was a black young man in Ferguson who was friends with Mike Brown, who was actually one of the spearheads for the protests. He saw folks coming in from the organization, now Black Lives Matter, none of them from there. He didn't know who they were, and he was straight street. He cussing folks out. Who are you? He's on his money. He's seeing these media trucks all over the place, and he's wondering, why is all the world here? They don't know Mike.
Oh, are you talking about that activist? He was and he died, right?
Yes, he was killed.
He was killed. Yes.
His body was burned in the car.
He came out and he said, do not support Black Lives Matter. I don't know who this is. They're not from the community.
He called out George Soros. He's naming names. This dude was like, he's tweeting stuff. Where all this money coming from? Yeah. And at some point he gets into an argument with one of the Black Lives Matter organizers, and Pimp slaps him in front of everybody.
Oh, wow.
Shortly after that, his body was found dead. To this day, they don't know who did it. So, the cops did it. It's like, but they don't really know. Okay. He mysteriously dies. But I can't remember his name.
Me neither. I remember when that happened.
Darren, thank you. So I just heard the producer say it.
What was it, Justin?
Darren Seals. Google the article, Who Killed Darren Seals.
Okay.
And that will show you the beginning. In the article, it doesn't tell you, they're not pontificating who they think did it. They give you the receipts about what led up to his death. And my point being, that was when Black Lives Matter ascended as a international phenomenon, right? He was questioning where all this money was coming from, because you had folks descending on Ferguson like the Super Bowl's being played there. Now, just be real. Just use common sense. Well, it's because they're concerned about Mike Brown. Brothers get killed either by cops or other brothers in cities all over the country. But all of a sudden, we go hit the brakes on this one? Oh, because it was a national... But why, though? Why? Because there was other... Okay, the very next year, Laquan McDonald got shot 16 times in Chicago. Most folks still don't even know his name. So wait a minute. And that was even more deep, because the cop who did it, they hid the video until after the election so that Rahm Emanuel could win his election, which he wasn't winning.
Wow.
That don't even get to Black Lives Matter.
I don't even know that story.
See what I'm saying? Laquan McDonald's name should be known much more than Mike Brown's if you talking about justice, right? So what's going on? It's because Rahm Emanuel was not somebody you want to come after. What's up with the and the judge made them. The family was asking for the tape for a year. A judge finally made them release the tape so they could see how their son died. They didn't even know for a year, right? That's what's going on. But Black Lives Matter, they did a little bit of a protest there. Other than that, no. But Ferguson's on fire. Then Baltimore's on fire, right? Black Lives Matter's in the middle of that, raking in millions and millions of dollars through Act Blue, which is a progressive organization that itself says gives to progressive candidates and causes. Pump the brakes. Wait a minute. If we're raising money about this cause, why is it partisan? I'm not saying why is it Act Blue, why is it Act Red, anything. Why is it associated with one of the political parties if we actually talk about what's going on the streets?
Right.
That's what I'm talking about. So this became the, and what did Black Lives Matter do, among many other things? From Ferguson to Palestine. Patrice Cullors and them, they go to Israel. Standing in Nazareth, which is Israel Prosper, her Mark Lamont Hill is part of Dream Defenders. Yeah. And they constantly make the issues, black issues here, about the Palestinian. Now, what they're doing is, why? Again, for the same reason I told you, because folks aren't going to pay attention until you can get black people involved. It's the same thing that Yasser Arafat started doing back in the 60s and the 70s. Why did Yasser Arafat make friends with Eldridge Cleaver of the Black Panthers? Why did he reach out to Jesse Jackson? Why did this man who lives in Israel, born and raised in Egypt, care so much about black folk? Or maybe he don't. Maybe he's using them. It's like the same way he's using the Palestinians.
So when he reached out to the Black Panther leaders, what did he say? What was he doing? What was the connection?
I wrote about this in my book. And folks, we got all the receipts. Go to ibsi.org. You can check out our video. We made a video called Black Panther Eldridge Cleaver Became a Zionist, because he had a whole transformation when he learned the truth of what was actually going on. It's a long, long story.
Wow. And so Yasser was the first person to approach him, and then he became a Zionist actor? Okay.
No. Oh. After all this. So let me give you a quick version of that story. Okay. So Eldridge Cleaver meets Yasser Arafat in Algiers, Algeria in 1969.
Okay.
The reason why he's there, Eldridge Cleaver, is because he has fled the United States because he's going to be indicted for shooting a cop in Oakland.
Okay.
He was initially arrested, placed in San Quentin. He was released on a technicality, but was supposed to report back. Fled and went to Cuba. Went to Cuba because Fidel Castro's people are telling him, because they're all Marxists, yeah, we down with the black folks to come here. We're going to help you revolutionize, right? So he went to Cuba, his own words, to learn to get the weapons and training so he can come back and overthrow the American government. That's exactly why he was there. So when he got there, Fidel Castro's people kept stringing him along. They weren't training him. They weren't giving him anything. And the reason why they weren't, we talk about it in the video, is because of all the receipts, because Fidel Castro was pimping his own people the same way that Yasser Arafat was. So when Eldridge Cleaver got there and he saw the oppression that Fidel Castro's regime was employing on its own people, they were afraid that he was going to help those people overthrow Castro. So his life was in danger.
Wow.
So he flees and goes to Algeria. It is Algeria where he meets Yasser Arafat, who's there for this thing. A bunch of folks who were the revolutionary. They're almost like a little convention. Now, all this is in the book. All this is in the video. From there, he begins the anti-Zionist stuff. Because right at first, Eldridge Cleaver was just a Marxist. The Israel part wasn't even on his radar. After meeting Eldridge Cleaver told him that whole, we stand with the black people and what the white folks are doing to you, these Jews are doing to us. So he bought that hook, line, and sinker, right? So he said, I'm against Zionists, that he became part of that whole thing. He got changed because over the next 7 years, he begins to see all these abuses in all these communist countries. Starting in Algeria because he saw black slaves. That was the beginning of his thing. He saw, which is still slaves in Algeria, 1 million slaves in Libya, black African slaves, slaves in Sudan, slaves in Qatar, slaves in Saudi Arabia. These same organizations and countries that tell them black folks, we stand with you, are enslaving people who look like you. So you might want to start there, right? So when he sees that, he's going, what's up with this? I go, yeah, that's how it is here. He's like going, okay, he looked like me, but if I lived here, I'd be a slave. So he's traveling, he goes himself. This is all his testimony. He talks about it, goes to Russia, he goes to different countries, both Arab and other European countries that are all communist countries, and he's seeing the worst human rights abuses he's ever seen in his life.
Wow.
Makes his life in Oakland look like Disneyland.
Wow.
He even said himself, I'm not saying it was cool what we went through in Oakland. He said, but my God, he said, what here, the slavery, the torture, he went, man, he came back to the United States a full-out Israel supporter and a full-out defender of American democracy and the Republic.
Wow.
So you don't hear about him. Folks know about Soul on Ice because he was anti-Israel and anti-American, anti-West. When he came back, changed, they stopped talking about him. He tried to convince his friends, Angela Davis, the other folks he was working with, he tried to tell them, y'all, we've been lied to, we've been bamboozled, we've been...
What about Stokely Carmichael?
Stokely Carmichael, who became, he changed his name to...
Kwame Ture.
Kwame Ture, the one who said that a good Zionist is a dead Zionist. It's a trip. He never learned the truth. He was fed the propaganda. See, none of them who spewed that stuff could actually tell you, I went to Israel and I went to the encampments. I saw the whole thing. Yeah. They are saying what the PLO told them.
So the people who never went didn't get changed, but the people who went and traveled and seen what was going on,
nothing objective. If they went with some PLO tour, which happens to this day, these Palestinian organizations that will take black pastors to only show them what they want them to see and lie to them there, that does happen. That's been happening for a while. But I'm talking about a trip where we actually go. Remember I told you when the pro-Israel group took the black pastors and then they let them talk to Ethiopian Israelis? Yeah. Right, but they let them talk. They talk, right. Yeah. That's what they do, the same thing. They go and they'll talk to certain Palestinians. So when I was in Israel last year, me and one of my South African friends, Klaas and Khaled Abu Tuame, he's an Arab-Israeli journalist. Khaled took us to Bethlehem. We walk around different shops and everything. And we were just talking to people. Talking about people, their life. And it was a trip. They knew me and Klaas weren't from there. Yeah. And they were very, very guarded. Right? What do you feel about the occupation? Basically, almost everyone, Israel is Israel. We're living our own lives, type of thing. Yeah. But we were filming it. They were really cautious. So when we turn off the camera, they start talking about Mahmoud Abbas, the Palestinian Authority, kind of thugs they are, and of course they're not going to speak on camera. They could get killed. Yeah. See that? That's not the kind of conversations they want to have. The Kwame Ture, they ain't gonna have. They're going to tell them what's really going on. Because Fatah, which is the military wing of the PLO, right, which is as ruthless as Hamas, right? Yeah. You can't just get on there. To this day, Ashira, you protest in Gaza about Hamas, you will die. Yeah. One young man a few years ago posted something about, he had a Zoom meeting with some Israelis. Hamas found about it, arrested him. One other young man in the West Bank, he posted something on Facebook that was, disparaging to the people. They came and arrested him. So we're talking about, they need to rise up. Like, okay, but you have to understand, they live in a police state. They live in a terrorist state, right? Yeah. So when I'm taking a black leader over there and they don't know those things, and I'm just having them talk to other folks who just don't like Israel or the Jews, and they're giving them the version of stuff. I'm not even talking to other Palestinians who may have a different view because I'm being sold a bill of goods. That's been going on since the late 1960s. And that's the fatal flaw in terms of whether it's pro-Israel or the pro-Israel side. Right. I've already said before, they actually make that same mistake in not having the conversation. That's how Eldridge Cleaver, his story, it's the most noted one because he was the Minister of Information of the Black Panther. He was one there along with Huey Newton. Yes. Yep. They were the iconic leaders of the Black Panthers, especially ones that were based there in Oakland, California, where it actually was born, right? But his transformation and how it happened, what he learned, and not only come back changed, but an Israel advocate, defending Israel and the Jewish people. I mean, a complete 180. But again, he had all the receipts. He said, no, I've been to those Arab lands. I've seen the slaves. I've seen the torture. I've seen the people who are aligning themselves against Israel are the worst human rights abusers on the planet. They just know you don't know that. Right. They show you this brochure. They show, oh yeah, come to Cuba. Yeah, Cuba's beautiful. All the beaches and all that. But he said, this is what I would do. And I love this about what he was saying. He died in 1988, I think. He said Eldridge Cleaver would do what would drive them crazy. You would spend your money to take him there. He would leave your tour. He would leave your butt. He'd go walking through the neighborhoods on his own because he want to talk to the people. Yeah. So that's what he kept doing, and that's what kept messing them up. Oh yeah, and America's this, America's that, and the Jews are this, the Jews that. He said, listen, because it's all lecture, right? So he would purposefully go and live amongst and talk to. So when he's having these real conversations, people, like I was in Bethlehem telling people, they would say stuff like, one lady told him, he said, you know what? She said, if the Castros allowed us to leave the island, because you can't just leave, it's a communist regime. He said, there'd be nobody left on this island but the Castros and their friends. Wow. She said that back in the 60s. Yeah. So he learned these things. So he kept doing this. He would get to, so there's several of the Eastern Bloc nations that he visited, or the different Arab nations. He would get there and he would purposefully, because he's the kind of person he was. He goes, yeah, I heard all that. Let me go talk to this shop owner. Let me go talk to this mom over there. And he would get the real story from them, and that's part of what changed them as well. It's like going, oh, I get it. So y'all do the same thing on the black community. These we represent the blah blah civil rights of the blah 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 blah. Like meanwhile, the Oakland NAACP is writing a letter saying, help us. Yeah, ain't nobody tripping on them. That's what Eldridge Cleaver will go talk to them, right, and say, oh, okay, so your issue isn't just white cops being racist. Your issue is the fact that there's crime everywhere. There's no good jobs anywhere, and y'all don't even come to us until you want to free Palestine. Oh, I get it, right? That's what Eldridge Cleaver was doing. And that's why he was no longer, quote unquote, popular, because now he was really speaking truth to power.
Why is it that we do not learn about Arab colonization, especially in relation to Africa, what's going on with Boko Haram in Nigeria, and just, Christian persecution as well that's going on in Africa, and slavery that still exists
millions
today.
Of slaves, millions. It doesn't fit the narrative. What our institutions, Ashira, were captured decades ago by both communists, by Islamists now at this point, who have their own agenda. And it doesn't fit the narrative. If I talk about the slaves throughout that region of the world, how the Arab slave trade of Africans is 1,400 years and counting, since the death of Muhammad, when Islam spread from Mecca there in Arabia across the region. The slaves that are in Sudan, the slaves that are in Libya, the slaves in Mauritania are part of a legacy that goes back 1,400 years. Wow. That doesn't fit the narrative. Why? Because I can't talk about white people white colonizers. I can't talk about white racist police. I can't talk about any of those things because all the folks there are brown. Yes, some of them who are enslaved are Africans working with them. That's always been the case. But what you have is a situation in which they're still living as dhimmi, they're still living as second-class citizens, and are still living as cattle, slavery. We joined an organization called the African Jewish Alliance that brings information to bear so that we can actually affect our government to not so much go and bomb anybody, but actually so that we can use our moral voices as Americans to bring awareness to that. It doesn't fit the narrative. I guarantee you if the slaves in Mauritania were owned by the French government, everybody would know about it. But it's Arabs. The slaves in Libya, Arab Muslims, right? And that doesn't fit the oppressor narrative, right? Because these are people of color and they're all oppressed, right? They're people of color and they're enslaving these people of color, right?
Yeah.
So it doesn't get talked about, so it's politically incorrect.
Right.
I can only talk about it if it's either white people or conservatives or whatever. It's fill in the blank. Whoever the boogeyman is supposed to be, I can't have a real conversation about real human rights abuses. Therefore, people are still being sold for $300, $400. I mean, but by the millions.
Will we ever get past this point? Because Americans continue to look at the world, and especially Israel, through the lens of oppressor and oppressed. And we cannot look at the world through that lens because it just doesn't apply across the world, you know? So that's our narrative and our lens here. But what is your message to Americans of, you need to open up your mind, broaden your perspective, and try to understand, if you're going to put your voice to it and protest in the streets about it, try to understand, the Middle East is not the same as America.
Yes, ma'am.
And our issues are not the same as America. How we solve issues in the Middle East is not the same way we solve issues in America.
Yes, ma'am.
And everything is not about black and white across the world.
Yes, ma'am.
Even with the Arab slavery, it's not about brown and brown. It's just that they have a certain doctrine.
Yes, ma'am.
An ideology.
And if we're going to stand against human rights abuses, we need to stand against that like we would stand against anything else.
Yes.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Exactly.
So I'm not very, for the last several years, I need to qualify this, I'm not very optimistic about the general direction that America is going in. That's just my feeling. I think there's much worse ahead of us. However, there are some positive signs, in my opinion.
Okay.
One of those is the increased criticism of the American education system. You have more and more parents choosing different options for their children in terms of their primary education, whether that's charter schools, whether that's homeschools. As a matter of fact, one of our IPSI ambassadors, before she was an IPSI ambassador, Connie Morgan, she writes for Free Black Thought.
Oh, shout out to her because she had me on her show. I love her. She's great.
That's my girl. That's my girl. She wrote a powerful article a couple of years ago about the rise in black homeschoolers. So we homeschooled our children. That was back in the 90s, right?
Yeah.
So it wasn't a big thing in the black community. It's much more so now. And according to the stats that she quoted in that article a couple of years ago, 16.1% of black American households homeschooled. It's the largest percentage of any demographic in the United States.
Wow.
It is black homeschoolers that are growing the most and accessing more options in terms of education choice. It's a white issue. No, it's an education issue. That's one of the things that I point to when I see this country, because I see more parents taking more of an involvement in their children's education, because this disinformation that you're talking about, everything from the Free Palestine to everything just anti this, anti that, or this, all the Marxist stuff. This stuff is happening from grade school all the way up to college. So, and when the pandemic happened, people were doing school at home, many parents were being exposed for the first time to a bunch of stuff that the kids were learning that had nothing to do with math, nothing to do with science, had everything to do with ideology, right? It was a religion, it was a cult. So you have that happening, and that's a good thing. It's bad that they're having that the negative part is happening with schools are concerned. To me, the positive is that there's more parents, not just black parents, white parents. They're actually seeing that they need to be more involved in their child's education, so their child is really learning. So that gives an opportunity, whether they're Israel advocates, whoever they are, an opportunity to engage those parents, to engage curriculum, right? Because sometimes they can even do a homeschool thing or whatever charter school thing, but their curriculum is still this kind of anti-Western, whatever. So that's a good thing that we see happening, that I'm seeing is going to continue. I think the parents are going to continue to be critical. There have been a lot of things that have been exposed. And then again, for those who are listening, I'm not against teachers at all. I'm a teacher. My wife's a teacher. We're educators, lifelong educators. My wife taught in the public school system in Stockton for several years. We had a private music school. We taught kids after school and charter schools, all those things. No, teachers are amazing. The problem is that the system is broken. Teachers are trained in education schools. The education schools are where all this biases stuff is actually coming from. I think that what has to happen is it starts with, other than family, education. What the children are learning, how they're learning it. Again, are they being engaged? Are they asking questions? Are they being able to ask questions? Are they really being critical? Or are they just being given slogans and hashtags, that type of thing? I think that for me, that's one of the most positive signs that I see in an otherwise kind of bleak situation, that there's more of an aggressive, I want my child to have a good education thing happening where parents are always concerned with their kids, but it's been more aggressive now because of the silliness and the craziness that we see happening on these campuses. That to me is a good thing.
Why should the U.S. support Israel and fund Israel?
It is our greatest ally in the region, probably our greatest ally, period. And Israel fights the front line of this ideological war that is extremism. People have heard me use the term the jihadists. It's not an anti-Muslim thing. There are Arab Muslims who are Christians and Muslims who are Israeli citizens who serve in the IDF. Who they're fighting for the preservation of the Jewish state, just like Jewish people are, because they know that they're free. So, is Israel being that bastion both of democracy there, and also being the front line of a war that is against freedom? See, Hamas doesn't just hate, as you know, hate Jews, starts with Jews, hates Christians, it hates other Muslims. When they invaded Israel on October 7th, Ashira, you know, you've been to the site. They killed Muslims.
Yeah, they killed Muslims.
Christians, Jews, gay, straight, they didn't care,
Yeah.
right? That's the mindset that's spreading, unfortunately. And Israel is their number one target. Iran, the Islamic Republic of Iran, calls Israel the little Satan and America the great Satan. Our allyship was them. We have shared values, free country, free democracy, all of those. Ours is a constitutional republic, but still where people of different faiths, different ethnicities are able to have their voices heard. Israel is that, all of those things. That's why we said, that's why we can be critical. We're talking about, let's be critical, right? But we recognize it's still an amazing place. Those things are not mutually exclusive. They are our number one ally. And then some of the funny part, I want to say this real quick. We have a military relationship with Israel in terms of the funding. It's a very controversial thing. I have my own opinions about it. Some of the stuff I'll leave it off there for now. I'll just say this, that Israel is one of many countries in which the United States had that kind of relationship. We give money to Nigeria, and they have a problem with Boko Haram, right? We have money to Egypt, right? And we have those types of relationships. What's unique about the Israel one is that, number one, all the money that's allocated can only be spent on American firm. They have to buy American weapons, and they have all these other restrictions that many Israelis don't even like those restrictions, right? But number two,
so the money comes back.
Yes, ma'am. Right.
Yes.
It's this military industrial complex. It literally is. And I'll come back to that one second. So then, for instance, and also the technology. Israel develops technology like the Iron Dome, which benefits us because now we are developing some of those same types of things, which is Israeli technology. So it's definitely a working together. I do want to address that part. It's somewhat controversial, but that part, the other one I left alone, I'll address this one.
Okay.
We, as Eisenhower said, are, as he warned, as a country, as a government, are very much funding both sides of those wars. It is the military industrial complex. Yes, in as much as we have a military relationship with Israel in terms of funding, we give funding to Hamas. We give funding to the Palestinian Authority. As a matter of fact, the case is easily made that when the Biden administration came in and began to resume funding beyond the Taylor Force Act, which says that you can't use this money for terrorists, we flooded it. We started to fund UNRWA again, United Nations Relief Works Agency for Palestinian refugees, without any restrictions, knowing full well that money is not going to the Palestinian people. It's going to these people that we already said are very, very wealthy. And what happened after that? Terrorism against Israel that we haven't seen in a long time leading up to October 7th. We funded that. So when Hamas did that, that was our money as Americans. You said, oh, we give money to Israel. Here's the sin and the shame. We give money to Israel and Israel's enemies. We give money to Israel's enemies, and then we want to blow our horn about giving money to Israel, talking about, oh, Israel has to defend itself, and it's a difficult neighborhood. Bruh, you gave the money to the terrorists trying to destroy Israel. That's complete military industrial complex, because most weapons manufacturers are American. American guns killed those people. Yes, is Iran funding them too? Absolutely. They're getting funding from other places. Of course, we lifted sanctions from Iran.
And we just gave what, $6 billion to Iran,
yes, ma'am,
for Qatar to oversee.
and then not to mention the fact that I remember Caroline Glick, the journalist friend there in Israel, we give money to Qatar in that we operate the only U.S. air base in the Middle East is in Qatar, in Doha. Oh. So their money comes from us. We're funding the Qatar. We're funding Qatar. We're funding the Hamas. We're funding. Okay, so wait a minute now. We're funding the Muslim Brotherhood against Israel, but we're also giving Israel money to defend itself and the people we're funding. Who's making out like a bandit? The weapons manufacturer. That's called the military-industrial complex. And people have gotten frustrated with me. Well, you shouldn't be saying that. No. If we as Israel advocates are going to talk about, if we're going to wave our banners and say we're so excited about this relationship with Israel has with America, and we're advocating for the money to be spent, I get that, right? And some people feel differently about that. I get that. Here's the thing. But if we're going to do that as Israel advocates, but not saying something about the billions of dollars we're giving to the folks trying to kill Israel,
right?
So all those missiles that Iran just dropped, that's from the money that we
was giving them.
We're giving Israel's enemies the money to destroy Israel. But then patting ourselves in the back by giving Israel money to defend itself, that's the game. And that, in our opinion as an organization, that needs to change. If we're going to actually have a real military relationship like that with Israel, we also have to be real about the fact that we are funding the jihadists trying to destroy Israel. And if we're okay with that, then we have a problem with our own morality. We question that as a policy, that we're cool with it because giving money to Hamas.
Yeah.
But because we give money to Israel, how about we stop giving money to Hamas? And maybe Israel wouldn't need as much to continue to have to defend themselves against the people that we are arming. The paragliders you're talking about, we train them to do that. We train those paragliders, right? Even the military wings of the Palestinian groups, they were talking about this. We're training them now. Ashira, you guys can Google this too. We are training paratroopers for the Palestinian military.
Wow.
We're paying for that. Our military personnel are training them. Now, why are we training the Palestinians in the West Bank to learn how to jump out of planes? For what? What they're going to do with that knowledge and information? They're not even land. They're not having a body of water. What are you talking about? We're simply preparing them to fight against Israel. And not to mention the fact, as people think I'm just talking whatever, they're saying from the river to the sea. After what happened October 7th, Mahmoud Abbas, the Palestinian Authority, paid millions of dollars to the Hamas, to the Palestinians from Gaza who participated in October the 7th.
Yeah.
They made that announcement. Where's that money come from? Your taxes. So I'm going to stop preaching there.
So under the Trump administration and under his past administration and his current, or we don't know if he's going to make it to be president.
Yes, ma'am.
But did he have any policies where he was going to stop this type of funding?
The Taylor Force Act was an act of Congress that Trump signed into law, which basically it was named for Taylor Force, a young man who was a West Point graduate who was killed in Tel Aviv by a Palestinian terrorist. There was a bill that was drawn up, and basically the lawmakers said, we can't be funding this, right? Again, I want to make it very clear. They weren't talking about cutting off Palestinians from aid. They're talking about that aid being used for terrorism, right? There needs to be more checks and balances. So they actually passed that law, and it made it illegal for us as a government to knowingly give money to the Palestinian Authority, knowing that they're going to use it for terrorism. Mahmoud Abbas never changed anything. We're going to use it for terrorism. We're going to use it for martyrs, everything, right? So when the Biden administration came in, they immediately began to fund the Palestinian Authority to the tunes of hundreds of millions of dollars.
Wow.
The Trump administration also cut funding for UNRWA. He was called all kind of racists and bigots. UNRWA, again, is that United Nations body that actually funds the Palestinian refugees, if you will. Right?
Yep. And oversees all the schools in Gaza and the education.
All of that.
Yep.
It's rife with Hamas. Hamas members they're one of the hostages was found in
the teachers, UNRWA teachers' home.
There you go. You know what I'm saying? So it's clearly it's Hamas.
Yeah.
So the Trump administration said the same thing. They said, this money is being used by Hamas. We are going to stop funding UNRWA. All the media went, oh, Trump hates Muslims. Oh, Trump. What the Trump administration always said, they weren't saying we're not going to help the Palestinians. We're going to strategically identify ways to make sure that the aid gets to where it needs to go. The media didn't want to report that.
Right.
So Biden comes in immediately, begins funding UNRWA, begins funding the Palestinian Authority, release sanctions and gives $1 billion to Iran. Next thing you know, October 7th, right? This was the difference in the administrations. And people sometimes will get frustrated with, oh, you're just building up the Trump. This is not about Trump. I'm bringing you the receipts. Do you want receipts, right? Do you want to have a conversation, or do you want to wave your little elephant or donkey flag, right? Whichever. Right. We're actually having a real conversation, and we have the receipts. With Rabbi Pesach Walicki, who works for the organization Israel 365, did a video, and he showed the chart how terrorism went down during the Trump administration. Wow. And how Biden...
I always say that we wouldn't be in a war right now if Trump was the president.
I agree with this wholeheartedly. I believe October the 7th, my opinion, October 7th wouldn't have happened.
Yep.
Iran wouldn't have dropped 300 missiles on Israel. Thank God that, they were protected.
I mean, even the Ukrainian war, I don't think we would be in it as well.
I think that the world's bad actors see weakness in our administration.
Yep.
I'm concerned, like as other people are, about what China will do where Taiwan is concerned. I'm not an expert in those things. I'm just saying I'm using common sense. If they see our administration as weak, which they do, the pull out of Afghanistan.
That was awful.
People
terrible.
Watched that. Our enemies watched that.
Yeah, and then Putin said, "Let's go." What's your overall stance as an American about your tax dollars being spent overseas, whether that's Israel, the Ukraine, Nigeria, Egypt?
But I am not an isolationist like some of the other folks that I know. But at the same time, I do think there needs to be for me as an American taxpayer, I believe that there needs to be a real justification, and there's a real vetting, whatever word you want to use. That if we, like in the examples I gave, whether it's Iran or whether it's particularly Palestinian Authority, whatever, if we're knowingly giving money to regimes and nations who hate us, who are using that money to attack us. American soldiers have been killed since the October 7th and what's going on in Yemen with the Houthis and everything.
Yeah.
I believe that if we know that, we have a moral and fiscal obligation to not give them money. I just think it's a low bar. If they're going to do these things with the money that we're actually, in terms of what type of foreign aid, I think our foreign aid needs to be contingent on things like that, and not just how they're attacking us, their own human rights issues, right? So Nigeria, and the other talking about the Biden, talking about the Africa part of it.
Yeah.
During the Trump administration, Nigeria was placed on the State Department list of nations in which religious freedoms were repressed. Christians die in Nigeria every year more than any other nation, 6,000 to 7,000 to 8,000 a year. Wow. Over the last 20 years, some 70,000 Christians have been slaughtered in Nigeria. What the Biden administration did, the first thing that they did, it came in and took Nigeria off that list. This is what we're talking. So we still have this economic relationship with Nigeria. So I'm saying, okay, not beyond the Israel part of it, even beyond the attacking Americans part of it. If they're slaughtering or they are turning a blind eye to their own people being slaughtered, yet we are still funding, for me as an American, I have problems with that. I don't have a problem with us having relationships financially with other nations and cooperative types of things. Some people do, I don't. But if we can't explain how our money is not being used in these terrorist, human rights abusing types of situations, I believe we need to cut off the money. I think that's a low bar. Stop funding people who are slaughtering their own people, who are enslaving people, who are killing Americans and, trying to destroy Israel. How about we not give them money, right? I'm not saying that we go bomb them. I say, how about we not give them money to do what they're doing? That's, for me, that's my opinion on it. I hope that makes sense.
That made a lot of sense. Do you think America is headed to a civil war?
We've been there for a minute. It's just becoming hotter. We are, in my opinion, more ideologically divided since 1861, before the start of the first Civil War. I said, tell people I think it's worse. Then it was more of a binary. You had the Confederate States, you had the Union. The issue was slavery. That was the main. There's other economic things, but slavery was the main thing, right? That was the crux of it. Today, it's not just a binary. It's splintered. We are splintered as a country. It's not like there's a left and there's a right. There's left and folks fighting on the left. with each other.
Yeah.
There's folks fighting on the right with each other about all kinds of things, right?
Right.
I think that we are in, now I'm gonna say this as a pastor. I said this on a tweet the other day. I said, God has been abundantly good to America. America has become increasingly ungrateful to God. These two realities will soon collide. I think this is where we are. God has blessed this nation in the midst of its own flaws and the stuff that we've endured and done as a nation. He's been abundantly the most blessed nation in the history of mankind. Folks from all over the world still come here, opportunity set. But I think that as a people, generally speaking, we have not been grateful to him. We have not been that light on a shining hill. Again, for folks who are anti-American, no, I love my country. And my folks died for this country as well, right? No, I'm just being as honest as I can, especially as a pastor. I see us as, generally speaking, there's 330 million people here, but generally speaking, as a nation that is ungrateful for the blessings of God, which has descended into a bunch of complaining and whining and dictating. And I tell folks, oh, look at these kids. I can make some people mad. I was trying to make them angry. Pastor Dumisani, these kids on the campuses, they're talking about free Palestine, and they're supporting Hamas. They're burning American flags. I said, yeah. And they're talking about how silly the kids are. I'm saying, oh, these stupid kids. I go, well, who are their parents? I say, how you go talk
Who's
about...
Who's their daddy?
This generation, when I hear my generation talk about how stupid my son's generation is, I'm going, okay, and that fault would be...
Who?
Okay, so if the kids got to the school and got indoctrinated, who sent them to the school? They was working their butts off in middle school and high school trying to get the grades and pass the tests to get into the school. If you already knew it was Hamas University, why did you send them there? And if we already know that Qatar is spending billions of dollars influencing, which is the worst kept secret, including in the pro-Israel industry, why are we doing anything about it? Now I sit there and learn about all these kids. The kids, how about the professors? How about the endowment? Harvard has a $50 billion endowment. Wow. They hired Syed Erekat, who was the chief propagandist from the PLO, to be work as part of their Kennedy School of blah, blah, blah. Why are they hiring terrorist propagandists in our top schools? What did you say about that?
They didn't say anything.
What I see here is a nation, and why? Money. I believe that many of our leaders, whether they're academic, whether they're political, not all, yes, God knows there's some amazing men and women who are doing the best that they can. The tide that they're swimming against, I can hear the prophets, hear the Jeremiahs, hear the Isaiahs. Isaiah said, wash yourselves and become clean. Come, let us reason together. These men were talking to the soul of the nation. Yes, it was Israel, but I'm talking about the principle of it. They were talking about how the nation had lost its way.
Yep.
I believe if there was the Jeremiahs and the Isaiah that live today, those...
And specifically in Isaiah too, they were talking about how it doesn't matter how religious you are, how we are treating one another.
He said, when you spread your hands to pray, I will not hear you.
Yeah.
I'll turn my back from you. I believe where we've descended to in our nation, again, not every person to a person. I'm saying that generally, our leaders love money. Isaiah said, Isaiah chapter 1, verse 23, it says, your leaders are all crooks. They love bribes. What was he saying? He's saying, generally, your leadership has lost the plot. That's where we are. As a nation, I believe, like I talk about the homeless industrial complex in California, I believe that unfortunately that mentality reigns so supreme over much of our governance here that what decisions are being made about money, the fentanyl that comes in from China every month, right? We know these drugs are killing people. But somehow we can't stop it. Oh, well, the borders are, no, man, there's too many people making money off of this. There's too much money being made. Why does Qatar and China have that kind of influences on our campuses? Because of the billions of dollars. There's too much money being made, and there are not enough of the leaders who are standing up and saying, you know what? We're selling out our own kids. We're selling out our own nation. We're selling out our own legacy. We have to stop doing whatever is going to get us money and ask ourselves, is this right? Is this building us up? I believe, Ashira, that the danger that we're in this part of our nation is that there's too many leaders making too much money selling out the people. Not just the black people, the white people, the Hispanic people,
all the Americans.
The folks out there working hard, trying to put food on their table, trying to put gas in their car. They're trying to live their lives. That's the vast majority. Muslim, Christian, Jewish, they're trying to live their lives. And the main thing they're fighting against isn't the Muslim Brotherhood. It's not Hamas. It's their own government leaders who got their own foot on their neck. And I'm not talking about some sort of populist thing or some sort of communist thing. I'm talking about leaders, even in this constitutional republic. I'm talking about God having to raise up leaders who care about the nation more than they care about their pocketbook. This is where we are right now. And I think we're in this danger zone. This civil war is coming because there's many people who are invested. They're cool, whatever. As long as they get paid.
Yeah.
As long as I'm making mine, these folks can go at each other, they can kill each other, whatever. As long as I'm getting mine. Do I still get mine?
Yeah.
I'm not tripping. That's the danger, I think, of where we are right now.
So are you saying that there's not a solution? We just have to go through this phase? We're going to have to go through this phase?
I'm going to keep my pastor hat on so I don't try to get in trouble. I believe that, my wife and I have talked about this for years. I mean, we started having these conversations back in the 90s, no joke. I mean, we would talk about where we saw the nation going. Not that we've been all deep, we just have these conversations.
Yeah.
I believe that we are at a certain point of no return, meaning that some things only get better after they've gotten worse. I think that a certain type of a collapse is coming. What that looks like, I don't know. But I think that we've gone so far and strayed so far from some type of moral and righteous path. We talk about the founding fathers and what they both said. I think that we've strayed so far from that there's going to have to be a bottom drop in. That's what I feel. I feel. It's funny, if people continue to take their kids' education in their own hands, it's going to collapse public school systems across the country. And many people are concerned about that. And my answer to that is that it is going to. If that happens, yes, more and more people take their kids out of the system because the systems are usually paid for per student. Yeah. And every student who comes out, that's less money the school gets, right? And people say, oh, don't you care about the kids? I said, yes, but here's the problem. If the system is broken and you want the parent to keep their kid in the system so that the system continues, do you see the insanity of that? So you're saying, Ashira, I know your son's not really learning. I know he's being indoctrinated and everything, but you know what? Public schools need to exist. Now, while I'm saying that to you, my kid's over in yonder private school, right?
Right.
Okay. So then I'm asking Ashira to prop up the system that I know is broken. You know what's going to have to happen for Ashira and every other parent? If they say, I'm going to have to find something different for my child to learn, that means that system is going to collapse. I believe that's a metaphor for the United States. I believe there's some things that are going to collapse because they're so rotten. When it's gotten so rotten to the core, that's my feeling. And I'm not hoping that. I love my country. I don't want to see any of that. When we talk about civil war, I believe we're already started there. I believe that it's going to continue to descend because it has to. Because it has to, let me say this as a pastor, and I'm on a church thing. Some of the changes that you made in your life, you made when all hell broke loose. Everything fell to the ground.
That is the truth.
That was it. You had nothing else to do. No more tricks up your sleeve.
No.
Your partners wasn't there no more. You texting folks. Even the folks that was your friends ain't got nothing to say to you because you look like you got the plague. You're leprosy now. It was you and God.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, and then your life turned, it became a testimony for you because you said, the bottom dropped out. There was nothing. I turned my face to the wall like Hezekiah. Me and God had a conversation and he brought me out. I think that's what the United States is. Right here, I believe that we've come to a place in which it's if God has been as good to this nation as he's been, if he's blessed it as he's blessed it, and we collectively have been as unfaithful to him as we've been, I think that what's next is inevitable. There's got to be a learn. Okay, we're going to have to learn what this means, and we are seeing it. The highest depression rates in any other civilized country. Children committing suicide, 15, 16 years. How do you lose all hope? The wealthiest nation, yet the most depressed. Of the 330 million, I heard the stat, half of our nation is on some sort of psychotropic drug. For whatever's going on in their lives. That level of depression and sadness. In the wealthiest country, the signs are everywhere. The parents are not able to conceive children. The infertility rate among men is highest than it's ever been in the history of this country.
It's crazy.
You see
people struggling to have one kid.
Yes, ma'am.
My parents have 9.
And the Bible says the blessings of he said children are an inheritance from God, and the fruit of the womb is his reward. Children are a blessing from God. So if we're not able to have them, and I'm not coming as a fire and brimstone or coming at people, I'm saying these are signs of a nation that is in spiritual crisis.
Wow.
So this continues. And our birth rates are so low, we are not even replaced. Chuck Schumer stood in front of a press conference a month ago and said, the reason why the borders are open is because we're not having enough babies. He said it. Americans aren't having enough babies, so we're letting people into the country. Some of them most of them illegally, right? He's going, okay, how about we encourage people to have more children? How about we start to actually work with the economy so that people can raise children? How about gas not be $4 and $5 a gallon? How about we put things in place for parents to be able to raise children in an economic environment that is not hostile to them, right? But because people are making money on the broken system, that's why the system has to collapse. I believe that that's what's happening. I believe that's where we're coming. We're always praying God's grace. One of the rabbis said it so eloquently. Even though there might be some sort of retribution coming, God is still a gracious God. He's still faithful, right? So it doesn't have to be a lowering of the boom. I believe in a book of Joel, he says, call for a fast. He said, let us mourn, let us ask God. He said, who knows? He might leave a blessing. Who knows? God might. So that's where my heart is. But I'm saying on the real, here's where I'm concerned about where we are. On the other side, God is still a faithful God. What is God going to do? I'm not trying to call that. I'm not asking for fire and brimstone. I live in this country. I love this country. I don't want to see what I think happening. And so I'm real about the fact that I see it unfold in that way, but that's where my pastor had is, that's where my believer had is to say, okay. So as someone who trusts God, man who's supposed to be a man of faith, God, I see we're here. Yes, ma'am.
How do you prepare for this collapse? Like spiritually and in a physical way? Like, what do you tell the people?
I'm glad
to
you
start
asked that, because
preparing?
it's both. Spiritual is the first one. So that has to be the prayer part. There has to be the acknowledgement of what I see around me. And so now I'm asking God, like David said, search me, know my heart, try me, know my thought. God, give me wisdom. God, give me direction. This is a time of great turmoil in our nation. Many people are suffering. There's all kind of disinformation. There's all kind of bad stuff. But you are faithful. So you said, except you build a house, they labor in vain that build it. Give me wisdom as the husband, as the wife, as the mother, as the father, as the business. Give me wisdom. I believe it starts there because Proverbs says, acknowledge him in all your ways, he'll direct your paths. From there, I believe the physical part of it happens. What am I doing with my businesses? What am I doing with my money? How am I investing? What things am I buying? What things am I disinvesting in? What things am I now doing? How am I doing in terms of the kind of my food and nutrition? What types of things do I have to do for my family to make sure that we have what we need? I believe it starts with prayer, starts with the spiritual part of it, and then the physical part of it becomes. Another story. Years ago, my wife and I, we finally bought. We had to get a bed. We have 6 kids. You guys have from 7, right? With 6 kids. And the car that we had a Dodge Caravan that held 7 people, but it was 8 of us, right? Okay. So we all stacked up and everything like that. So we had to get in the car. So my wife had her eyes set on a Chevy Express 3000. That's the big 15 passenger. And she got it and everything. And we put all the money together and got a little financing and we got the car. And so, and we had some little money set aside, right? We had a little nest egg thing set aside. And my wife, Valerie, shout out to my baby. She said she got a notice in the mail about the car. We could get an extended warranty, a different one, a broader one, for about $2,000 or something like that. And when she saw it, because those type of things happen all the time, but when she saw it, something in her spirit went, "We need to do this." So she came to me, said, "Dumisani." So I was like, "Nah, we already got X, Y, Z. No, we good. So I was really, no, babe, we need. I really feel we need to do this. Okay, it's $2,000. We got a little money. Okay, struggling young family. Did it. About a month later, she could tell the story better than me. The engine head cracked. They had to rebuild the whole thing, and it cost us almost nothing. Because had we not gotten that extended contract, that thing that happened wasn't covered.
Wow.
And I said, hallelujah.
Thank you, God, for a good wife.
And I'm telling you, so Ashira, she had to say what was in her spirit. And then I had to, I'm the priest of the home, bro. That don't mean you boss people around. If your wife gonna bring you some knowledge and some wisdom, you better humble yourself. Yeah. So I said, oh, man, I didn't want to. And we didn't argue. It wasn't a situation where we started fighting. I just was like, oh, it's $2,000, whatever the count was. And I thank God, because the actual bill would have been like $7,000 something. Wow. I tell that story for this reason. God is a faithful God. If it says, acknowledge him in all your ways, he'll direct your paths. The prayer part first. If our nation is in crisis, which it is, if all this stuff is going on, which is education system, finances and everything, pray And then as a person of faith from that point, trust God at that point. And that was one of those things for me. I had to trust him. My wife felt it. It is funny. I'll say this last thing, brother. God didn't say it to me. He didn't tell me to get extended. I would look at the thing like junk mail, bro, whatever, right? You want everybody want money, right? And my wife's like, no, we need to do this one. And so he was preparing us and protecting us because we didn't have that 7,000 plus to pay for what was going to, and it happened about 2 or 3 months, however long ago it was later on. It was bad enough that the thing had to totally be, and only because we bought that extended warranty, right? So we bought that thing. I believe that God is that type of, he's amazing, and there's that practical way in which he shows up in our lives. And sometimes people are like, okay, I don't know why, but I feel like I'm going to do X.
Yeah.
I'm going to step out and do X. Maybe it doesn't make sense at the time. When you look back, you're like going, whoo, I'm glad that I stepped over here.
Right.
It took me this way. And I was over here. I thought it was cool, but something had me move that. I believe that God does those types of things, and it shows his faithfulness to his people. I'm encouraging people on a personal level with what's going on in our nation. If the word of God says, blessed is the nation whose God is the Lord. If we're struggling with that as a nation right now, and I'm talking about what religion people are, I'm talking about the gratitude for the blessings that we have. If we're struggling like that, then I would say, first part, pray. And then make your plans, right? Make your plans. The word of God says that the steps of the righteous are ordered by the Lord. Make your plans, knowing that you've prayed and you ask God, ask you for wisdom, direction, show me what to do with my money, my health, all those things. How do I do, what do we need to do next? Because you might do some stuff that steps out of the vein. Somebody, why is Shira doing X, Y, Z? Why are you worried about what Shira? Like she might be making the moves God's telling her to make. She don't worry about what she's doing. Don't analyze her. You go talk to God about what you need to do, right? Don't keep analyzing her. See what you need to do.
Focus on yourself.
It starts there. I mean, goodness gracious, as leaders, we have to speak to other people, yes, but it starts at home. Me first. Before I'm the pastor, before I'm the leader, I'm Valerie's husband, and I'm my children's father and grandfather. That's my first obligation, right? Everything else is after that, right? So my first thing is, God, help me be the man of God. Help me be the husband. Help me be the father. Help me. Why? Because if I'm going to stand in the marketplace, if I'm going to be in the community, let me be about it, right? Don't be talking about it. Oh, husbands, blah, blah, blah. How am I going to tweet something to husbands and I'm treating my life like crap, right? Parents, I don't even talk to my kids, but I'm going to tell other parents, you might want to fix your house, right? Or at the very least, address it. Yeah. You might
at the very least.
Right? I'm saying. And then again, like we said before, nothing's perfect. Nobody has a perfect house, but are you honestly starting with the inside? And then from there, this is what's happening. I'm seeing more and more. I've never in my life seen both Orthodox rabbis and Christian pastors talk about the coming of Messiah. Yes, from different perspectives, but they're looking at what's going on. I'm hearing pastors and rabbis talking about the footsteps of Messiah, the attacks against Israel, all the instability in the nation globally. I'm hearing both of the religions talking about this. I said, it's amazing. I've never seen it to this degree before, because that's what they're seeing. There is concern in terms of, okay, God, are these events kind of playing out like this because of what we see scripturally, the nations coming against Israel, a war against Israel, all of those things. That's been quite fascinating to me to see that. I've never seen it that way either, especially more rabbis, talking about this is the Messiah's coming, and then these pastors on the Jesus coming back. So I'm watching this going, this is very interesting how they're both saying the same thing from their perspective. Right. That makes sense?
Yeah.
Yes, ma'am. So, yeah.
It's so interesting. I had a friend say, he's like not religious, semi-religious, but he just said, anytime in history, if we see people starting to say like the Mashiach is coming, we know it's like we're going into a wartime. Like we're really about to go into like that is the sign if people start speaking in that way. I mean, we're already in a war in Israel, but he said like there's going to start to be more global wars.
Well, sweetheart, that goes back to your thing. Now I'm in my church mode too. I'm like, oh, sweetheart, baby doll. That's the other part of our alliance with Israel as a nation. What we see is that Israel is a harbinger. Here are the nations lining up against this tiny Jewish state. Yeah. And again, Ashira, like our friends say, first the Saturday people, then the Sunday people. Yeah. And because the people who hate Israel in this nation, it's amazing how they're waving Hezbollah flags and Palestinian flags, and they're burning American flag. They're being very, very honest. Yeah. They're saying, oh yeah, the Jews are Jews, but we're coming for the Christians too. You just wait, right? Yeah. So they're coming to the synagogue, they're barring, and you see all these different things, these different videos. And what history has already taught us, particularly since the Islamist ideology, that demi-laws apply to Christians, Jews, and other Muslims who were not cool with the agenda. That's exactly what's playing out here. So we're watching our Jewish brothers and sisters get attacked, and we as Christians, we better recognize that this is not just a Jewish thing. Yeah, what starts with the Jews never ends with the Jews.
Right.
This is the part that is for people to see, like you're talking about the different signs and everything. What's very clear is that this hatred for Israel, and people wrap your brains around this. Here people are, oh, Israel's committing genocide, all these different lies about what's going on, right? But here's the thing. What other nation suffers this type of persecution of its foreign nationals? Okay? Russia has invaded Ukraine. How many Russian Orthodox churches are being boycotted? How many Russian stores are being boycotted? How many Russians in America? I'm not suggesting that it happened. God, please don't take me out of context.
Right.
Leave our Russian brothers and sisters alone.
Yes.
But my point being, see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
North Korea is heinous to its people. How many Korean Americans are being attacked?
Because of North Korea.
But Israel and the Jews. Folks are walking up to rabbis, they may not have an opinion on the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. They might be anti-Israel, who knows? But still they're being attacked for being Jews. No other people does that happen to. Nobody else. Nobody's trying to attack Iranians for dropping bombs on Israel. Nobody's attacking somebody from the Nigerian government because of Boko Haram. None of that kind of stuff. We're not tripping, but it's the Jews. And that's how you see that unique evil from the time of Pharaoh, who said, let's kill all the Hebrews because there's too many of them. And Hebrews hadn't done anything to them. That's the type of hatred that we see. It has a spiritual root. And we recognize that Ashira, that it's coming, it's tearing away the soul of our nation.
Yeah.
Because they're going to come for the Jews, and they're coming for the Christians, and they come from the Sikhs, and they come from the Baha'i. That's this mentality, that jihadist mentality, sees everybody's as underneath Islam, and everybody's going to be destroyed again, including Muslims who are not cool. I have Muslim friends who advocate for Israel, whose lives are in danger.
Yeah.
Because they know they're speaking out, and many of their friends and family don't want them to. That's the danger of what we may be losing here in the United States, that religious freedom, that freedom of speech. Israel is already experiencing it. It's fighting an existential war, but it's fighting on behalf of the entire free world. And if people don't see that, it's going to creep up on them in ways that they could not even imagine.
Wow. And I don't think they're going to see it. I don't think they're going to catch it. I think
Which is why I think we're going where we're going. I think it's one of those, let's say, fat meat is greasy. I think we're going to learn by experience. And that's I think that as a nation, we are going to see what we don't see by experience. We're going to have to look at it dead in the face. I think that's where we are.
Dumisani, I could talk to you for like another 2 hours.
I love how long we've been here.
I know. But I do want to ask you one last question before we get out of here.
Yes,
what can the Jewish community learn from the Black community, and what can the Black community learn from the Jewish community?
That's hard, Ashira, only because there's been so much interaction for a long, long time. So there's really deep interactions there. For all the things I said that are critical, there's still Black Jewish synergy across the country that's been going on. It's going to continue on. But if I can answer it as succinctly as I can, I think that for our Jewish brothers and sisters as they're engaged in the Black community, just continue to do it with authenticity. Like listen to what's being said, have the conversations, have the difficult conversations, and then build. Do what you're doing. Do what you need to do in your community to affect positively what's going on there. Where the Black community is concerned, from pastors and on, especially with all this anti-Semitism and all this Israel hatred, I would say inform yourselves, right? This is, again, you want to come to our organization, we'll help you. We'll do events there, ibsi.org or other ones. Inform yourselves so that you are aware of what's happening. Now let me say this specifically to the pastors, to our pastors, Black and beyond, Black, white, we have to be able to understand that the attacks on our Jewish brothers and sisters is a religious war. It really is. And that like Dr. King said, injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. That we cannot be silent while that's happening, because it's going to come for us as well. The word of God is true, and it says that even when Balaam, last week, the Torah portion, I think it was Balak and Balaam, or was that this week, trying to curse the people of God, and every time he stood up, he kept putting a blessing in his mouth. Yes, ma'am?
Balaam and Balak,
He declares God's blessing on Israel. I'm encouraging the pastors, and I'll go back to Black pastors, we have to teach that biblical understanding of this, and we have to be aware of what's playing out in our streets. The Israel hatred, the Jew hatred, which is also America hatred, that's hatred for all of us. It may be starting with them.
Yeah.
So I would encourage those pastors as they're talking with each other and talking to their congregations for them to understand biblically what's happening so that they are not deceived by all the propaganda and everything, and go deeper. Again, if you need more information about Israel as a nation, that type of thing, we're taking several black pastors to Israel in late September. By the time people see this, it may have happened already. And one reason why we do that is because we want them to touch the land and see the people. We want them to,
and what I like what you're doing as well is you're not just connecting people to biblical Israel, but they're also being connected to modern Israel. Because I think a lot of church groups come and they connect to biblical Israel, and they don't connect to modern Israel, but you take them in like Innovation Africa, you take them to all these different groups so they can connect to also modern day Israel, modern day Israelis. And I think both are important to have both of those.
Yeah, I agree. And their lives have changed. She was able to have the spiritual connection. Yeah. And then see what Israel as a nation, just how amazing it is. Their lives are changed. And they are blown away by the difference between the real Israel and what the media told them Israel was and everything. So I think that's important.
I love that you brought up Bilam and Balak. I just want to add to that story what I thought was, because I love that story, because I never could figure out why did they think if they changed locations that it would be better and then they could curse from a different location. Stand there. But what I learned from that story was at the end of the day, Bilam told Balak, saying, listen, I can't curse these people, but what you can do is send your women into their camps. And so I just want to remind the Jewish people that we can't be cursed, but by our own, we can take ourselves out by our own demise. And so they sent the women in, and they slept with, the men, and they slept in front of the tabernacle. And Pentecost had to go and kill the princess and the priest. But that caused eternal curses. We brought it onto ourselves. So although we can't have curses on the outside, we do, back to what you said about internal, we need to work on ourselves internally.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Which that parallel is to this nation. When we see those things in the scriptures, we recognize that these are principles that we as people of, if we're called to be people of the book, if we're actually following the God that we say that we're worshiping, we're supposed to learn from those things and recognize that was Abraham Lincoln said, a house divided against itself cannot stand. So yes, we can withstand the foreign attack, but if we are so divided and hating God and destroying our own families, then we can't survive because we're destroying ourselves.
Because we're destroying ourselves from the inside. Dumisani, can you tell everyone where they can find you, your social media, and your organization? Yes, ma'am.
So they go to ibsi.org. That stands for the Institute for Black Solidarity with Israel. ibsi.org. Also, I'm on social media as well. You'll see
X.
I'm on X. I'm on Instagram.
What's your name on X?
On X, Dumisani Temeskin. Okay. So Dumisani is a Zulu name. It's a long story about that. It's not my given name, but I talk about it in my book. Get the book. Dumisani Temeskin is also the same word. One is Zulu, one is Amharic, one is.
Can you spell it out for them just so they can find
Dumisani,
it?
Dumisani. Temeskin is TMS. I'm sorry, TEMSGEN. TEMSGEN Temeskin.
And they can follow you there on X then Instagram.
Instagram, you'll be a Dumisani6. Okay. And I'm on LinkedIn as well, just under Dumisani Washington. And what they want to do, we launched a radio show about a month ago.
Oh, amazing! Yes, tell us about it.
And we've been doing it every Sunday. It launches. It broadcasts out of New York, even though I live in New York and I live in North Carolina. On the WNEW HD3 FM 102.7. It's called Truth to Power Live with Dumisani Washington. They just go to ttplive.com, ttplive.com, and you can stream it from there. You can listen to it live there. You can go, we're on X, we're on YouTube. It'll be on all the podcasts by later on this week. My son's still finishing that, so it'll be podcast versions of it also. Truth to Power Live with Dumisani Washington.
Amazing. Thank you so much for coming. People don't know that you flew from North Carolina this morning to Miami just to be here, and you're flying back the same night. So I really appreciate you coming to come and speak on the show and speak with me and all the insight that you shared. And I want to have more conversations, have this conversation live soon. So we'll do more events and things together. And thanks for being such a great friend.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you, Ashira. Thank you. And blessings on you and all that you're doing, sweetheart.
Thank you so much. All right, guys, that is the end of this show for this week. It was just so powerful. Please like, comment, and share share. I want to see you guys in the comments. Tell me, what did you think about this episode? What do you think about Black and Jewish relations? What do you think about the direction America is going to? And who else do you want to see on the Black and Jewish podcast? Comment below, and I'll see you next week.